With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Iranian officials said general agreements were reached during U.S.-mediated nuclear talks in Geneva on February 17th. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated the sides agreed on guiding principles and would proceed accordingly, though drafting a final deal would be complex and no timeline was set. He said progress was better than in previous talks, and Iran would continue discussions with the International Atomic Energy Agency, whose chief met Araghchi a day earlier. Talks follow Iran's suspension of IAEA cooperation after U.S. strikes on its nuclear sites in 2025. As negotiations unfolded, Iran conducted military drills in the Strait of Hormuz, while Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei issued defiant warnings toward the United States. Iran fired live missiles into the Strait of Hormuz during military drills as U.S. envoys held indirect nuclear talks with Iranian officials in Geneva. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said the exercises demonstrated readiness to close the vital oil transit route through which about 20% of global supply passes. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned U.S. warships could be sent to the bottom of the sea, while President Trump said Iran wants a deal but would face serious consequences if talks fail. The U.S. has increased military deployments in the region as part of what officials describe as a dual-track strategy of diplomacy and deterrence. Ukraine is reportedly using veteran NATO pilots as civilian contractors to secretly fly donated U.S.-made F-16 fighter jets, according to France's Intelligence Online, a claim Kyiv denies. The squadron, said to include former U.S. and Dutch Air Force personnel, focuses on intercepting Russian long-range weapons and operates outside Ukraine's military chain of command. Ukraine has faced pilot shortages and training challenges since receiving F-16s in August of 2024, with several acknowledged losses. Moscow views the conflict as a NATO proxy war and alleges Western personnel are deeply involved in supporting Ukraine's military operations. About 100 U.S. troops have been deployed to Nigeria in an advisory and training role at Nigeria's request, according to the country's defense ministry. The troops will provide military training, technical support, and intelligence sharing to help Nigerian forces counter extremist groups, but will not engage in combat. The move follows U.S. airstrikes in December against ISIS in northwest Nigeria, ordered by President Trump. Trump has warned of escalating violence against Christians and designated Nigeria a country of particular concern, while Nigerian officials deny claims of widespread religious persecution. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Seneca seized 17,700 pounds of cocaine worth more than $133 million during 4 interdictions in the Eastern Pacific and offloaded the drugs at Fort Everglades, Florida. The operations, conducted under Operation Pacific Viper with support from U.S. Southern Command's Joint Interagency Task Force, South, targeted vessels in international waters. Additional seizures near Florida totaled $5.6 million. The Coast Guard also interdicted suspected illegal migrants near California and Puerto Rico. Officials said maritime interdiction is key to stopping U.S.-bound narcotics and protecting communities from transnational criminal organizations. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Australia will not repatriate 34 women and children in Syria with alleged Islamic State ties after Syrian authorities blocked their departure due to procedural issues.
Undermine and destroy our way of life. And so, as my mother would say, you make your bed, you lie in it. It's unfortunate that children are impacted by this as well. But we are not providing any support. And if anyone does manage to find their way back to Australia, then they'll face the full force of the law if any laws have been broken.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Right now, somewhere in Nigeria, there's a Christian family being persecuted. Those who are not killed are often forced to flee their homes. At Equipping the Persecuted, they're committed to reaching every affected area and help heal the deep physical and emotional wounds that have been inflicted upon them. But they can't help them without your support. So please visit equippingthepersecuted.org and donate today. Sign up for just $35 a month. It's a little over $1 a day, and you'll help rescue Christians who are suffering and provide security, medical care, food, shelter, and love. The situation is urgent, so I'm asking you to join in the next 10 minutes. It's a life of fear and danger for these Christians, but for just over $1 a day, you can change everything. Go online to equippingthepersecuted.org and make a difference in the life of a persecuted Christian. That's www.equippingthepersecuted.org.
Everyone has a reason. It could be good grub, your liquid gold, or more golden years. For someone you know, for parents you don't, or because 1 in 3 of us will need blood in our lifetime. For every reason to become a donor, there's an even bigger reason: life.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the volunteer manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions, or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important and special to this shelter because they support us in caring for thousands of animals each year. The impact they have enables us to do far more for the animals than we would be able to. For example, we can get on top of the huge amount of laundry we have. So the volunteers allow us to clean thousands more blankets than we could. It's incredible the amount of gifts that we're given by the public. We're so grateful for it. So if we get some toys, we can give them directly to puppies straight away to play with, or towels, we can take them to our vet hospital for them to use immediately. So it's a really important job to help staff with. I would say to someone who's interested in volunteering to please get in touch. We would love to hear from you. We have an application form on our website that you can fill in, so please just detail all your skills and experience you can offer the shelter, and we'll be in touch when a suitable role comes up.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Welcome. It's the middle of the week. It's the hump day of the week. Can you believe it? It just flies like that. As you get older, it flies like that too. Incredible, isn't it? I just think we have life goes by too quickly, and they often say when you look back at what you've done, there are many things you might change, but it is what it is, and we have to accept that. It is who we are, and that's why we do what we do. We have we'd like to talk to people, we like to discover things, we like to find out, if we can, the truth, the facts, not my truth or your truth, just the truth. And that's the idea of what I always thought was independent media. And even though with TNT we were run very much like a normal legacy outlet, we had all the protocols in place and stuff, we always searched for the truth, as we do now. Now, Nirit Sommerfeld is an author, actress, singer, tour guide to Israel-Palestine, blogger and activist for Palestinian rights. Born in Israel and living in Germany since she was 8, Nirit moved to Tel Aviv in 2007 before emigrating back to Germany. Now, Nirit has good contacts into the Palestinian community in Israel and Gaza. She's organised, used to organise trips to Israel, Westbank and Gaza to inform and educate visitors. In 2025, her first novel, now I am not going to be able to pronounce it in German, but it's Beduinenmilch, that's the translation, was published in German. Nirit, first of all, my German is appalling. Could you tell me In German, what does that mean, or how do you pronounce it?
Well, hello, Mike. You pronounce it Beduinenmilch, Bedouin's milk, and
But what about the other name? It's a Beduinemilch. That's German, isn't it?
so Beduinen means Bedouins,
You're
and
right.
Milch means milk, which is almost the same
Yeah.
in both languages. And the meaning is it's Bedouin's milk, and people often ask me, what is it? And I tell them to read the book. So, yeah, it has to do with the milk of Bedouins. So you can think about it if it's the Bedouins' milk that they breastfeed their children, or if it's the milk that they offer to people when they have them as their guests at home. Yeah. So it's both. In the
And
novel,
you used to
it
be
has
a
both.
tour. Used to have tours through Israel and other parts of Palestine. Can you
Yes.
tell me, because you haven't done it for a while, what have you heard? What's the let's look at the lay of the land. Take out all the politics and all the other stuff. Tell us the absolute truth about Israel, for example, but also the Gaza and the West Bank.
So first of all, I don't believe that there is an absolute truth. I believe that there are many perspectives in life. It always depends on from where you're watching it. Um, I cannot tell you the truth, but I can tell you as a kind of second-hand information because I haven't been there and I'm not an eyewitness myself, but I have many friends both in Israel and in Palestine, especially in the West Bank, who I trust and who I can cite, and I can tell you what they tell me and what pictures they show me, what videos they send to me. Um, in short, life for Palestinians is devastating. It's horrible. Um, Not to talk about Gaza, because in Gaza I haven't been personally, and of course I'm seeing all the news, all the videos of these horrendous last 2.5 years, and also before, but especially what has happened in these last 2.5 years with tens of thousands of dead people, hundreds of thousands wounded. They will have their scars for a lifetime. So it's hard even to imagine what these people feel and how they're really doing, especially since they believed that there would be a ceasefire since October 10th last year. During this ceasefire, hundreds of people have been killed, thousands wounded. So this is the situation in Gaza, and everybody who wants to know and can see the videos and what people like Médecins Sans Frontières, or this people who work there, who have risked their lives and not lost it, can tell us when they come back from Gaza. So there are organizations. There is Francesca Albanese who writes and talks about it, so we can know what's going on in Gaza. I can tell you from my personal experiences that I have made when I visited the West Bank, especially, and also Israel, is that let's talk first about the West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem. The situation of every Palestinian there is that nobody can be responsible for his own life or her own life completely, because every single
We actually have a frozen screen right now. Nirit's in Bangkok in Thailand, and she just disappeared. We'll come back in, I think,
Can you still hear
about
me?
now, I would probably imagine. We're back again. We lost that. Sorry, Nirit,
Sorry.
you were saying, and I'll just flick you back to the full screen when you start.
So the situation in the West Bank is, as I said, is really, it's a dire situation, and people people's lives is controlled completely by the Israeli occupation forces, which means they are under a military rule. They have to do whatever they're doing, if it's bringing their relatives to school or to a hospital or to arrange anything, something that has to do with bureaucracy or whatever. It's always passing checkpoints. It's always never knowing when you arrive, when you come home, back home. So it's really very, very difficult situation for them.
What about, tell us the difference, say, looking within Israel, the difference between those that are, say, Israeli and those that are Palestinian. If you looked at, say, in South Africa when they had apartheid, you had one rule for the whites and one rule for the blacks, and the blacks had a very, very, very tough life. And if you look at other parts of the world, race, not racism. Apartheid runs quite freely at times on the stream of racism. Can you tell me what it's like for the ones that are born in Israel and those that are Palestinian?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to know if you're born in Israel and you're not Jewish, you can have Israeli citizenship, but as a Palestinian, you do not have the same rights as an Israeli, as a Jewish Israeli. You have an Israeli passport. You can theoretically do almost everything that a Jewish Israeli can do. And if you ask Israelis or other people who are kind of the friends of Israel, they will tell you that what I'm saying now is not true, that every Israeli citizen has the same right, and they will kind of prove it by telling you that they have been treated by a Palestinian doctor in Haifa, in a hospital, or have had some Palestinian friends who had studied abroad, and so on. So it looks like they have all the rights, but they do not have all the rights. For example, they can not be they can not buy a house. They cannot buy property just like Israelis can. There are many areas they cannot visit. They cannot go there. Um, their daily lives their daily life is completely different. They don't have the same services in their villages and in their towns that Israeli um, citizens have. So the personal situation is very different for them.
You obviously have friends back in. Actually, first of all, do you have friends in the West Bank?
Yes.
What are they telling you?
Yeah, I do have friends in the West Bank. Um, they are telling us that they feel that, now I cite them, that the genocide that's going on in Gaza has swapped into the West Bank, and actually that what they feel is that what is happening now in the West Bank is the kind of original plan that Israel always had, namely to push the Palestinians back into kind of cantons, 5 to 6 cantons, or you could say reservates, where they could live, so they don't have to be expelled of the country, but they can live. They have no connections in between these cantonized areas. The PA is kind of pushed back into the the original stage where they are responsible, let's say, for the sewage um, of the cities, but has no power at all. And the power stays actually with the maintaining power is in Israeli hands, and they are the lords of the land. This is what people tell me.
It must be very oppressive. No, that's the understatement. What am I talking about? It must be the to strip human rights and dignity and all that, and continue living under oppression. What does it do to us? I mean, what actually is it doing to them? I mean, will it make a peace process of some sort work, or will it add more fuel to the fire?
Of course, it will add more fuel to the fire. I mean, I bow my head before all these Palestinians who do not throw stones or do even more terrible things. Um, I left Israel in 2009 already because I had the feeling that if I would stay any longer, I would become so aggressive. And I'm a very peaceful person, and I believe in a peaceful way of living together. So when I was there and I experienced all this oppression that I personally was not part of, but all my friends were. So I had the privilege to come to Bethlehem or come to Hebron or to any other part of the country and in the evening leave again. And my friends couldn't. And I could go to a demonstration and would not be arrested but my friends would, my Palestinian friends. So, and I was an eyewitness to all this and to the settlers who are doing whatever they want. And this was 15 years ago. Now it's much worse. The situation is really terrible. I cannot believe how the world watches how settlers are burning Palestinian houses, Palestinian farms, even animals. I mean, because they are Palestinian sheep. Can you imagine? They are killing the Palestinians' animals because they are not Jewish. I mean, it's really hard to understand. So, what does it do to them? It fuels something. But the interesting thing is that most Palestinians, and I'm not speaking for all of them, but what I have experienced is that most Palestinians, they have this, what they call sumud. It's a kind of steadfastness, kind of, yeah, it's whatever, God's will, and we will survive and we will live, and nothing will bring us, tear us apart from our own country, from our homeland. This is in a way astonishing because, again, it's my experience, it's my truth that most Palestinians that I've talked to always say the only thing that we want is to live in peace, to have our dignity, to stay on our land, um, and to have the kind of self-determination. Um, and yeah, this is something that you never hear in Israel. And as you asked me before about how's the situation of Palestinians in Israel, I read it in Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, 2 3 days ago. There is a Palestinian woman born in Jaffa, um, gave birth to, I think, 2 or 3 children in Israel. Um, but she was married or is married to a Palestinian man from Gaza, and she went a few days before October 7th in 23. She went to Gaza to visit, I don't know, to be there or whatever. And then she couldn't come out of Gaza. Now somehow she got back to Jaffa, but she cannot return to her children and to her husband. So there are so many rules and regulations that make it for Palestinians really, really hard to survive. And still, most of them, I, I find that they're not aggressive and they're not seeking revenge. Um, and I'm not saying that all of them are like that, but I'm talking to civilians that I have talked to. So it's really amazing how they still believe in life and still have hope for some reason. Because if I, as an Israeli German activist and political thinker, I don't know where to find this hope for a peaceful, just solution to what's going on there. I mean, it's really hard to believe that there is any solution, which is especially, comes from a just point of view.
Tell me, the people, say the Israelis within Israel, do they want the war against the Palestinians to stop, or do they just want the Palestinians to get out of Gaza, full stop?
Well, as I told you, I haven't been to Israel for 3 years, almost 3 years, and I'm talking to people, also to friends of mine in Israel, and I'm reading what they are saying. And I'm reading the polls. The polls say that most people, really a majority of people in Israel, wants the Palestinians to disappear. Nobody really says in what way. Well, that's not true. The minister Ben Gvir does say in what way he wants them to disappear. The best thing in his view is that they die or they get killed. So, but the majority of Israelis say, well, would be not bad if they would be deported from Gaza. And there's always this myth that all the Arab countries around Israel could just take them because everybody's Arab, you know. So I say it's a myth because it's like, you come to Europe and you tell the Italians, okay, the Greeks are coming now and taking over your country, go to Denmark. Because Denmark is also European. You're all Europeans, so go to Denmark. What's the problem? This is not exactly the same thing, but it's a little bit like asking Jordan or Egypt to just take a few 100,000 Palestinians, which is at the end of the day, it's
Not going to
ridiculous.
happen. Can you tell me, because we are getting towards the end of our time, and I appreciate it very much. Can you just tell me, because Donald Trump wants to have every peace prize known to mankind, wants to rule the universe, forget the world, and he's very proud of the peace deal that he's creating at the
Yes.
moment in this particular area. I have grave doubts, and people we've spoken to have grave doubts, because in an agreement you need trust. You need what do they call it? The spirit of the agreement, and we often receive many stories that Israel they have over 1,000 infringements, probably 1,500 infringements now on the agreement. Do you think there will ever be peace in this particular area? And here's something that it doesn't amuse me, but I look and I think, if you go back to the Second World War, and it was the atrocities upon atrocities on the Jewish people, and yet
Yes.
we have those that a bit like a child given a hiding when they're a kid, and a continuous hiding, and when they grow up, the chances are that they'll do the same to their children, because it's just part of what in their makeup. And I see that Israel knows full well what it is like to be murdered, what it's like to have genocide committed against their people, torture, the very worst of mankind. And what I see and what is reported is the same, except it is, instead of the child being beaten by the parent, the child is now the parent. It is now beating the children and going through the same process, this ugly process. That's what I think. And I think we have, it's very odd, but I don't think it'll ever change because of the hatred of Israel towards Palestine or Palestinians. And let's not forget, Hamas is not the majority of the Palestinians. However, and then we have the atrocities that have been committed against the Palestinians and the hatred and distrust that they must have also for the Israelis. I cannot see, for all the money in the world, how there's ever going to be peace, because for peace and agreement, you have to have the spirit of that agreement and you have to have trust. Is there any reason for those in Gaza and throughout, all the Palestinians for that matter, to trust their oppressors at this stage?
No, they don't have any reason to trust them. Why? Why should they? Israel has betrayed them for the last half century or even more, almost whole century. What Trump is doing has nothing to do with peace. It's a business deal that he's trying to put on the Palestinians. No Palestinian has been asked. No one, not even one. Palestinian leaders are either dead or in Israeli prison. Why should Palestinians believe in what Americans are going to do and what Israel is going to do? I mean, Israel is showing them that Israel can do whatever it wants, and is also doing it. So what you said before, it's interesting that you can say it from your Australian point of view. If you say such a thing in Germany, you are accused of anti-Semitism because you are comparing what the Nazis did to what's happening in Israel and Palestine. And this is completely forbidden in Germany.
But it's also here. We have, I won't get any visits because it just brought in all these new laws. But what it does do, it protects. And by the way, I have some very good friends. My wife, some very good friends who are Jewish and fantastic people. They're Australians. We love them, and we have some very good friends also from other parts of the world, and we love them too. It doesn't mean though that their governments are protected from criticism and questioning. And what I see the world doing at the moment is exactly that. You cannot question. They can do what they like. The government can do what they like, and you can't question it. And if you question a government, then you're regarded as an anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and this happens even to us Israelis and Jews, which is completely crazy. And this is what we experience. I personally experienced a lot. And Germans, who are probably the how do you say, the children or grandchildren of Nazis, tell us I am the grandchild of a Jew who was murdered in a concentration camp. My father fled the Holocaust to Palestine. So they tell me how to talk about Israel, how to what to say, what not to say, which words to use, which words I should not use. I'm not allowed to say genocide as long as it's not proven. All these things, and it's a really crazy upside down situation, especially in Germany, but I think all over the world. But I just found it very interesting that the way you were talking about it was very, you could very openly say what you think.
And I think, by the way, when we were TNT, we were not liked by any government because we had both sides on. We invite people to share ideas, and we reported news. We had news twice an hour and stuff like that. But nothing was going to except our what happened to us. They pulled the money out of us, so we had to stop. But we have to tell it as it is. And if you get it wrong, you get it wrong, but you'll fix it. So I think we have I think we need to be able to talk about these things, and I would love to have you back on again, because I think there's so much more that we need to talk about.
There's a lot to say. Yes.
Well, it's an abomination on humanity, and it's simple as that. And for governments to stop to try and cover this with every law possible. You can't do that. You will not succeed. I can tell them now, they will not succeed. Nirit, if somebody wants to find out about you or more about your book, how do they do that?
I have a website, and I'm writing a blog, and nowadays it's not difficult to translate it in any language you would like to have it. So it's just my first name, Nirit, Nirit, .de for Deutsch.
For Germany, yep. And we've just frozen. We can't say it's the German government because you are in Bangkok in Thailand. Nirit Sommerfeld there, and a brilliant conversation. Don't forget, if you wish to see that again, just go to our archives, go to theworldtoday.news and look for archives, and you'll see the interview there. Coming up next, we'll go over, well, we are in Britain, sort of. We'll go to the Chagos Islands. This is The World Today.
Makers are facing more travel.
When we're on the go, it's easy to go into our own world. Keep your mind on the road.
Our beautiful world is changing, withering, dying by the hands of those who don't value nature, even though we all depend on it for life itself. But there is hope. Together with caring friends, the Nature Conservancy can restore our lands, heal our waters, and save our wildlife with big solutions only nature can provide. But every day we lose more of the places we love, and we urgently need to save endangered lands, waters, and wild species. The actions we take today will determine the tomorrow we leave to our children and grandchildren. The water they drink, the air they breathe, the beauty they experience. To learn more about how you can help protect and conserve our beautiful world, visit nature.org today.
Asthma is a growing problem, especially among children. Asthma affects the quality of life for millions like me every single day. My name is Chris Draft, and I have asthma. And I've spent more than a decade in the NFL tackling asthma on and off the field. Join me in the EPA in helping people control their asthma. Asthma is a lung condition that can be controlled through medication and by avoiding things that can make it worse. 3 steps are the solution to controlling asthma. Step 1, talk to a doctor. Step 2, make a plan. And step 3, get rid of things that can make it worse. Asthma can be tackled. For more information on asthma, log on to epa.gov/asthma.
We're today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome back to The World Today. In the UK at the moment, it's 20 to 7. You should have been up by now. Stop it. It's not that cold. Okay, it is. It's freezing miserable. But in Queensland, which we're broadcasting from, it's lovely at the moment. I'm wearing shorts below this jacket and some flip-flops, thongs, for those that are not the thing you wear under your shorts, but they're the things I wear on my feet. So it's very nice here. It's 20 to 5 in Queensland, 20 to 6 in New South Wales and Victoria. And good afternoon and good morning. Now, Robert Midgley, spokesperson for Friends of British Territories Overseas, on X at British Overseas, former number 10 Downing Street and Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, communications advisor, journalist and Army reservist. Robert has been very active in following the Chagos Islands controversy and doing a lot of media in recent weeks. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning from London.
Yes. What's your weather like, by the way?
It's still dark at the moment, so I can't quite see, but it's not raining, which is the main thing. It's been raining every single day for the past month.
You're not really in the UK. No, you're not really in the UK. You're pretending. It always rains. Hey, can you tell us the latest in this continuing saga of Chagos, Diego Garcia, and all that sort of stuff?
So I don't know how much your viewers will know over in Australia, but the Chagos Islands are some of the most strategically important islands in the world and houses one of the most important military bases in the world. It's just below India, about 3,000 kilometers away from East Africa, and they're incredibly important. And the UK has held these islands since 1814. Since the Battle of Waterloo, since Napoleon was defeated, and we've held them in perpetuity. And in the past 20, 30 years, Mauritius, which is an island, is about 5,000 kilometers south of the Chagos Islands, has been claiming these islands for no reason, to be quite honest. And in recent years, they have stepped up a war of lawfare against us and found lots of different loopholes in international courts, and has forced the UK's hand into doing a deal in handing them over to Mauritius. And of course, this has a military base on that's US UK. It's incredibly important for the future. And as a volunteer in Friends of British Overseas Territories, one of our first, commandments is to protect the overseas territory. So we've been waging a huge campaign over the past few years about this now, and now it's been going through the House of Commons, it's going through the House of Lords, it's reaching its final stages before ratification, and things are really heating up to try and prevent these islands from being handed over. And what the deal contains is it's meant to be handing over a set of 60 islands and then Diego Garcia in 99 years. Now, of course, we've all heard the 99 years thing before with Hong Kong, and that was an absolute disaster too. So the deal itself means that the UK would be paying back for the use of its own islands. So it'd be handing away these 60 islands for free and then keeping hold of Diego Garcia in the south and paying Mauritius about £47 billion to lease it back to use its own island for the military base. And that's, it's absolutely absurd for taxpayers to be doing that when the UK doesn't really use it at all. And I should make out that a group of people who lived on these islands were deported back in the 1960s, and they've been campaigning very heavily to return to their islands. And in fact, the campaign has got to such a point now that a small group of these people, they're called Chagosians, they have taken a boat from Sri Lanka and they landed on one of the outer islands in the Paris Banos group of islands, and they landed there yesterday. Now, no one's allowed to go to these islands. So what they're doing is illegal, and they're recreating a settlement there. And we'll see how that plays out, but that's been the top of the headlines here in London the past 24 hours. And on the other side, we have the parliamentary bill, which is coming back from recess potentially next week to complete its process before ratification. So our aim is trying to delay it as much as possible, find out what's behind this, what's pushing this to be, so urgently done. Now, the government has come out with lots of different reasons why this deal is going ahead. one of its major ones is saying it can't use what is called an electromagnetic spectrum from on the islands. And they said this is down to the International Telecommunications Union saying that sovereignty has to be disputed and you can't use this electromagnetic spectrum. So therefore you must give up this territory for no reason at all. So that's one of the reasons. Another one is the ICJ, the lawfare that I mentioned. It has said that in 2019, the ICJ made a non-binding advisory judgment that said you must hand over these islands to Mauritius. And you can't really escalate that very much because there's two Commonwealth members involved, UK and Mauritius. So then that can never become a binding judgment. And then the third reason they say is because the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea demands this to happen. Now, that's really opened up the past few days because we've done an investigation on my behalf where we've asked a series of questions. MPs have asked a series of questions that we lobbied them towards ministers, and we found that there's lots of loopholes to say, actually, we have an article within what's called UNCLOS, the UN Tribunal of the Law of the Seas, called Article 298, which is a military exemption. But sovereignty cannot be disputed because it's a military base and there's an exemption in that article. So there's lots of ways to actually defend the islands from being even spoken about, let alone being granted sovereignty about. So we've been trying to expose all these little loopholes and provide ammunition to the opposition parties in Parliament to try and bring down this bill, because we don't see any reason for giving up these islands. As you may know, we have a very liberal government at the moment that is doing a big sort of decolonisation agenda. And this is setting off alarm bells across all our overseas territories. I don't know if your viewers may know, but we have other overseas territories, such as the Falkland Islands, such as Gibraltar, such as those in the Caribbean, and Pitcairn Islands in the Pacific Ocean. So, we want to protect these overseas territories for years to come. And it's not very helpful that the government is leading this agenda in this way. And as I said, there's lots of things at play, such as the money aspects. There's a lot of corruption. There's lots of socialist lawyers who are determined to have these islands handed over. And there's a lot of geopolitical aspects at play too. We've got China just next door. We've got India above us. They all want the US-UK military base out to escalate their own agendas. So we've got a lot of our hands exposing all these different routes right now, Mike.
I've just looking at the headlines. It says here that the US confirms it backs a surrender deal. And I recall not too long ago, Donald Trump said not very nice things about Starmer, which everybody does. So he's not being alone there. What do you think let's rephrase it. Do you think Starmer will do a U-turn, or in his mind, does he think he has no other choice but to do what he's doing?
Look, just on the US point, I was actually in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago discussing with the State Department, discussing with White House officials and senators, and they're very much against this deal. So they've told us that they have to play it diplomatically, that they have to go along with it. But behind the scenes, they're very much against it. They've said, look, we can intervene so much, but you have to fix it from the inside. And this is a worst case scenario of these islands being handed over. So I can fully understand the US have to go to Mauritius to deal with the worst case scenario, to have those security guarantees. So Mike, just remind me of the question there.
I just if Starmer was going to do a U-turn and go back on what he's doing, do a Trump, in other words, because the US is saying that they back this entirely now, this surrender, even though they are going to have talks with Mauritius very shortly. Um, what would make Starmer do that U-turn, or do you think in his mind he's locked into doing exactly what's happening now?
So there's a few aspects to this because Keir Starmer, I don't know if you have been following the news, but his premiership is hanging by a thread right now.
That's very sad.
And one of the many U-turns that he's doing, the Chagos Island is mentioned. There's lots of different people within Number 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister's office, that are saying you should drop the whole thing. Because actually, if you did drop it, nothing would actually happen. They say there'll be another international court ruling, but as I mentioned before, we can actually defend ourselves in the international courts from any lawfare to do with this using military exemptions. So it is possible that he may drop this from internal pressure. We have a national security advisor who has been determined to hand over the Chagos Islands, who's been driving this whole thing, who is also very close to resigning. So we think if he resigns, maybe the deal will be dropped. And because of the Chagos Islanders landing yesterday on the Chagos Islands and us exposing the legal flaws, there are routes to now say perhaps this can go back to Parliament and we can expose those legal flaws and complain to the Speaker and say, look, we think MPs have been misled in a sense, and therefore it's affected the votes within Parliament, and therefore the bill is completely flawed and should be withdrawn. So there's lots of different routes how we can play this right now. And we think it's just going to be one of them that will cause this thing to collapse. But there's a lot of pressure to have a U-turn on this right now. It may happen in the next few days, it may be in the next few weeks. But at the moment, on the 1st of February, these islands were meant to have been ratified and handed over. Mauritius had planned to give a big tax break to their citizens to start spending this money. So because they haven't had that tax break, there's a lot of pressure in Mauritius as well to get this deal done. So because it hasn't, that government may collapse imminently, and so may ours. So it's either one or the other. It's going to be one straw that breaks the camel's back here, Mike.
What about, his name is on the tip of everybody's tongue for the wrong reason. What about Mandelson? Is he one of the main beneficiaries of this? Is Mauritius being malicious?
So Lord Mandelson, or the former Lord Mandelson, his communications are currently being examined by a parliamentary committee, in particular anything to do with international affairs, international and foreign affairs. So we're convinced that there may be something in that to do with Chagos Islands, because he's the one who's been peddling this in the White House for God knows how long. And so we are currently waiting for those files to be published to see if there is anything to do with Chagos. But it's very highly possible that there are some sort of dealings within that that will expose it all further.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? What about, because you mentioned Starmer, there's some talk that he misled Parliament on this deal. Do you think it's just scuttlebutt? Do you think it's just we'll throw anything at him because he deserves it? But or do you really think he has misled Parliament?
So on the 22nd of May 2025, the Secretary of State for Defence was questioned about this, and he said the reason why we have to give away these islands is because of an imminent court ruling. And he made a very specific mention and said this ruling would come from the International Tribunal for Law of the Sea. So that was made in Parliament then. And then since then, as I said just a few minutes ago, a series of MPs have been asking these questions to find out, well, how does UNCLOS, as we say, affect Gibraltar and the Falklands? Does Article 298, that's a military exemption, does that exist? Is it still active? So we didn't have any confirmation about this Article 298 until this response on Friday that said, yes, we do have an exemption. Yes, it is active. So now, because that has been confirmed on Friday, is now saying that actually this statement that was made back in the 22nd of May 2025 is false. which means that MPs voted based on what he said. So yes, there is a possibility, and it's up for Parliament to decide this rather than myself, that actually MPs could have been misled into thinking that, we have to do this deal. But actually, no, it can be defended, and the ministers didn't talk about this. They didn't confirm it. And, it's there in black and white.
And China's been very quiet.
Well, it hasn't in a lot of ways, because they are on the deal. The day the deal was signed, a delegation turned up in Port Louis to congratulate Mauritius that this deal has gone through. They have done a series of statements welcoming this deal. And I should say that we're in a very, very strange position where the Prime Minister here is saying this deal, China and Russia and our adversaries are against this deal from going through. And they're accusing us, who are trying to protect British sovereignty, who want to protect the base in perpetuity, they're accusing us of being aligned with China and Russia and Iran or whatever. But actually, those adversaries want this deal to come through because the base is on 99 years, or will be on 99 years, which means they're playing the long game to sort of de-island the West one island at a time. They're patient about this, and they want us to lose that island. And the thing is, sovereignty is key. Once you have lost sovereignty, you've lost most of your rights. There is a clause in the deal that says if you stop paying, you will lose access to the base. So I don't know if, again, you follow UK politics that much, but we have Nigel Farage in the wings here who says we will just stop paying if he gets in. He's becoming very popular, and it's looking likely he could get into government the next general election. So if he gets in and says, right, we're going to stop paying for this, the thing is, we've already lost sovereignty. So that means Mauritius can turn around to us and say, well, you're not paying for this, so therefore get off our island. And we lose that island much sooner than 99 years. So this is a huge, huge risk, and will expose, a huge security flaw in that Indo-Pacific theatre.
Yeah, I see that Nigel, because we talk about a lot about Nigel. In fact, our show coming up next sort of will deal partially with him. The jury's out, in my opinion, about Nigel Farage. I mean, he wants to boot out 600,000 illegal immigrants when he gets in. Good luck on that one. Where do they go? Donald Trump, out of the 40 million illegals in the US, they've gotten 200,000 of them, and the place is burning down. So good luck on that one. I think Nigel, still 3.5 years to go. I like Rupert Lowe, always have liked Rupert Lowe. Just quickly, in about 30 seconds, tell us about the mineral and sea rights in the area too. Worth a lot?
Well, this is a very untapped area, Mike, and as you may know, the whole of the British Indian Ocean Territory was dedicated a marine protection zone a few years ago. So no one has been able to touch any sort of minerals or whatever that area contains. It's completely untouched and pristine. And there has been a lot of stories in the past few days that says that there's a lot of mineral wealth. And funnily enough, a new story did come about a few weeks ago between India and Mauritius have done a deal to say India will have access to this marine wealth, mineral wealth, once the handover is complete. So they're paying about $600 million to Mauritius to get access to this. So there's a lot of play, but it seems like India will actually have a lot to gain from this deal, which is setting off alarm bells here.
It does indeed. It's like an Agatha Christie novel. It's fantastic. It just gets juicier and juicier by the day, which is probably alarming to you,
Not
Robert.
for me, it doesn't.
It'll drive you to a drink before you know it. Robert, if somebody wants to find out more about what you do and the organisation you represent, how do they do that?
So Friends of the British Overseas Territories is a charity that promotes, supports and builds awareness of the UK overseas territories. You can find us at fotbot.org, that's fotbot.org. You can follow my updates on X, which is Robert Midgley 07. And you can follow the charity account on X too. It's called @BritishOverseas.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for getting up early when the rest of the UK is just getting up now. Lazy sods they are. It's far too early and cold.
I'm going back to bed, Mike.
Good on you. Thank you for being honest. That is the truth. Robert Midgley, thank you so much. This is The World Today. Coming up next, The Protagonist.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government reversed plans to postpone local elections for over 4.5 million voters after Reform UK threatened legal action. Originally set to delay elections across 30 councils amid local government restructuring, Downing Street withdrew the decision following new legal advice. About 672 councillors, including 205 Labour members, will now face voters in May of 2026. The government will provide £63 million to fund the elections and reimburse Reform's legal costs. Nigel Farage hailed the move as a democratic victory, while Reform aims to expand its influence in areas currently held by Conservatives and Labour. Nigel Farage unveiled the first members of Reform UK's shadow cabinet, saying his party is ready to govern amid what he described as instability under Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour government. Speaking in Westminster, Farage named Robert Jenrick as Shadow Chancellor, Zaya Youssef as Shadow Home and Justice Secretary, Richard Tice as Shadow Business, Trade and Energy Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, and Suella Braverman as Shadow Education and Equality Secretary. The team blends former Conservative ministers and business figures. Farage said further appointments would follow, presenting Reform as a credible alternative government. Spanish police risk assessments warned that Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's migrant amnesty could grant residency to up to 1.35 million people, far exceeding the government's estimate of about 500,000. A report by Spain's National Immigration and Border Center projected 750,000 to 1 million undocumented migrants could qualify, plus 250,000 to 350,000 asylum seekers. Authorities caution the policy could act as a pull factor and increase migration due to perceptions of Spain as permissive. Public opposition remains high, particularly among younger voters, while left-wing Podemos has openly supported expanding migrant political participation. High Court judges ruled in 2022 that the Home Office's policy of seizing mobile phones from illegal migrants arriving by small boat violated the European Convention on Human Rights and UK data protection laws. 32 asylum seekers have been awarded £210,000 in compensation, with 41 more cases pending that could raise payouts to £480,000. Legal costs have already totaled £735,000, and up to 1,300 additional claims could push compensation to £8 million. Critics, including Reform MP Robert Jenrick and lawyer Luke Giddis, condemned the ruling as costly and argued the policy helped gather evidence against smuggling gangs. A media column criticized the New York Times for not explicitly reporting that the alleged Rhode Island ice hockey shooting suspect, Robert Dorgan, identified as a woman named Roberta Esposito. Police said Dorgan allegedly killed 2 family members, wounded 3 others, and then killed himself during a high school hockey game, with authorities believing the attack stemmed from a family dispute. The article argued the Times omitted relevant information about the suspect's gender identity, while noting Dorgan had reported his gender change to police in 2020 and was divorced in 2021. Hillary Clinton has accused U.S. President Trump's administration of a cover-up over its handling of files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Crimes against girls and women. That should be the focus. And we are more than happy to say what we know, which is very limited and totally unrelated to their behavior or their crimes. And we want to do it in public because let's make this transparent. The survivors deserve that. The public deserves that. But you know, the Republican member of Congress who is running this hearing or this investigation is trying to protect the president. So let's get to what's really at stake here.
We'll be back with another news break at the top of the next hour. This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
It's early evening in Lochgelly, and as many as 100 young people gathered in the park. Some of the local residents see the young people as a problem, and while many people simply avoid the park on Friday evening, the Salvation Army has been taking a different approach.
Some young people are out on the street because they don't feel safe at home, or they may have parents that are working all the time and they're home alone a lot.
Hello, how are you? Good.
We see so many young people in crisis. We see so many young people turn into alcohol and drugs, and it's because there's not enough support.
We come and shower today for something to do with our friends.
They like to have a laugh, they like to joke around.
Are you okay? Be careful.
And the conversations that we have surrounding school and family, alcohol, drug use, can then go on to, okay, so how can we support you?
Throughout the UK and Ireland, the Salvation Army has been recruiting and training detached youth workers. But youth workers and the resources they need are scarce. Local authority funding has been drastically cut in recent decades, and spending on young people's services is only a quarter of what it was at its peak. All this shows the importance of the Salvation Army's work.
She won't tell anyone because she'll forget in like 2 seconds.
Our aims are to build relationships, to get to know young people, to be a constant in their lives, to be a safe adult, because not all young people have a safe adult.
It's not what we're here for, is actually.
So if we can be that constant in their lives, during the ups, during the downs of their lives, that's a major thing.
I start every run with a plan and a promise to stay safe. A big part of my plan is to be alert to drivers and other pedestrians. Whether you're on your feet or behind the wheel, the road belongs to all of us. Every trip, every time, safety first. Alert today, alive tomorrow.
The climate right now is no warmer than it's been many times throughout history. Our baseline is now the lowest that carbon dioxide has been in 600 million years. As far as temperature change, the IPCC's first report of 1992 showed that the medieval warm period was warmer than the present. Well, this didn't fit the narrative, so by the time the 1996 report came out, it was a completely contrived graph called the hockey stick. So what they did was they got rid of the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age, and so instead of the graph doing this, they flattened it out, and then they added instrumental record on the end that looks like it's going way up. The point is that the people that are calling them out on it are not getting the media coverage. You know, because look, at this point there's billions of dollars going into the whole climate change narrative.
A hoax about carbon dioxide in the climate has caused a global energy and economic disaster. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome back to The World Today and the Protagonists. Nice to have your company. A dispute has broken out between Reform UK and Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain. Based on reports from the Reform UK conference, Nigel Farage said Rupert Lowe's call for mass deportations of entire communities, that's how he speaks, including UK-born people, get out, cross lines of reasonableness, decency and morality. He added, that was the moment I realised we had to get rid of him, and get rid of him as quickly as we could. Farage dismissed Lowe's new party's 10% polling claim as utter rot and highlighted Lowe's low public recognition. This intervention from Nigel appears to be personal and does demonstrate his sensitivity to comparisons with the new party. It does also highlight the complexity of the issues and difficulties a future new government will face. Unfortunately, this dispute takes the heat out of the other major parties who engineered this disaster of unchecked illegal immigrants and showed no interest in urgently addressing it. What immigration policy? While many seem content to wait until the next election, the problems presented will be infinitely worse. Our panel today is again very, very good. Alec Kay, founding member of the Homeland Party, Catherine Blakelock, founder of the Brexit Party, and retired Lieutenant Colonel, I feel like saluting him, Alistair Pope, author and defence commentator. Thank you so much for joining us. Alec, first of all, just give me your views and your thoughts on the rising, I've got to put my arms out and float around, some big music behind me, of Rupert Lowe. Is he going to create a headache for Nigel?
Electorally, no, I don't believe so. But certainly rhetorically, yes. Obviously, one of the appeals of Restore Britain is they keep probing and pushing where Reform are weak. And where are they weak? They are weak on the matters of identity, immigration, Britishness. I'm sure we'll get more into that in today's show. It's all well and good saying for the past few decades, as Nigel has, that you're against mass immigration, how damaging it is. But we've had so much mass immigration that now the topic of conversation is starting to shift about reversing mass immigration. The fact that we didn't consent to all of this demographic change. And this is where Reform are weak. This is where Reform are conservative. Because whilst they're happy to reduce the amount of immigration, which appears radical on paper, actually what they're doing is allowing all of this demographic vandalism that's been done by the establishment parties for the past few decades to remain. And this is where Restore are doing a good job of exposing this weakness in Reform.
I thought I'll go to Catherine. Catherine, would you like to add your comment? Because I'm not a Nigel fan by any stretch, and I have that because I think Nigel is not all that sincere. He's a celebrity game show host in waiting, and this spat now with Rupert, it must cast doubts on the level-headedness of this celebrity game show host who wants to be Prime Minister. What do you think?
Well, I agree with everything that Alex said, with the exception of one thing, which is that it's going to be a massive electoral threat, and the aim is not to, is literally to beat Nigel and beat these soggy Conservatives. Already preparations are being made, and even before they've been registered as a party, 10 councillors came over yesterday. Within 4 days, people are being put in position, and there are already people being lined up to under an umbrella to fight the local elections just under the Great Yarmouth headed banner, which is Rupert Lowe's democracy. So on all the other points, I agree with Alec, but don't underestimate this because people are absolutely furious, and people are furious with what happened yesterday. Nigel made a complete hash of it. He couldn't have made it worse. If you look at the tweets between Nigel and Rupert, Nigel was ratioed 20-1. And it's a disaster, and so is a disaster becoming the Tory light. So don't underestimate it. Don't underestimate the feeling in the country. The time is right.
I want to go to you, Alistair. I'm not too sure how much you know about UK politics, but just as putrid as Australians. What do you know about Rupert Lowe and Nigel? Do you think Nigel Farage, and you're a good judge of character, we've had you on before, what you've said of Nigel on TV, does he look like a particularly good leader in waiting or more of a celebrity game show host in waiting?
Nigel actually is very much the game show host. I sort of liked him because he did say a lot of the right things. Whether or not he would ever carry them through was a bit doubtful to me. He seems to be someone who is willing to say whatever he thinks the public wants to hear. But the big problem here is he's also got a very thin skin when it comes to people in his own party who don't say exactly what he wants them to say. And that's, as you get more, if you only get 3 members, that's not too bad if one of them disagrees with you. But when you get, say, 50,000 members, you have to have a broader church than that. Now, what's happened here by kicking out Rupert Lowe is that they're going to split the vote. Now, let's say that Labour is down to pathetic numbers. They're going to get 29% of the vote if they're lucky, 25 to be more realistic. The Conservatives, well, they're going to get 20%. Well, that's 45. They still can't form a party. But if you then took Farage, who was going to get most of the rest, he might take the Liberal Democrats and a few other anarchists and Greens in there, but they were going to get most of the rest and were clearly going to win handsomely. If you now split that vote, and let's say Nigel was going to get 52%, and now along comes Mr. Lowe, and he takes away 20% of that, then it's quite possible that Farage comes to the silver medal because you have a first past the post voting system, not as we have in Australia, preferential voting system. So if you can just get one more vote than everyone else, then you actually get the seat. And I've seen a number of very close, there's a fellow called Michael Heaver puts up these things and shows me all the votes that go along there, and some of them are quite close. And yes, Farage has got up in this particular one there by only 200 votes or 2,000 votes or something. If that was now being robbed of those 2,000 votes by Rupert Lowe and his dissenters, then they don't win. And you're back to the uni party. So the huge problem here is these guys have got to get back together. Farage has got to pull his head in and realise there are other people can make comments apart from him. And he has to actually get broader policies than he currently has. And if it comes down to saying, yes, we need to deport a lot of people, and you do. I mean, the terrorism in the UK is even beyond that of what we're having in Australia now. Listen, by the way, just go back here. When I was in the army, I've got photos of myself on the airfield about to get on the plane, taking a picture of myself and the plane. If I did that now, the SWAT squad would be all over me. And I would ask for the death penalty, by the way. But now, travel used to be fun. It's not fun anymore. You know, in one day, when it was in a foreign country, I won't tell you which one, I had to be searched 12 times. I went into a mall, I got searched going in. I went into a shop, I got searched going into the shop. I went to another shop, I went and had a coffee, and somebody came up and asked me what I was doing. What do you think I am, you moron? And by the way, I unfortunately I'm not very politically correct with stupid people, and this is one of my huge failings. But I got searched 12 times. Then when I get back to the hotel, everything had the car was searched underneath, and then I got out of the taxi and I got in there and I went through the security again, and there was even security at reception after I already got past security, and I counted that one day I'd been searched 12 times. And by the way, there is a reason for it because when I was traveling the world these days, I used to insist on being put up in hotels that had been blown up. Now that might sound stupid, but it's the opposite of stupid. I figured out if they'd blown it up once, they probably wouldn't do it a second time unless it was Northern Ireland's Hotel Europa, which set the world record for being blown up. It turned out the hotel I was staying in was blown up 4 weeks later by a suicide bomber. So anyway, the point there is, yes, Farage is too tin-eared. He's a one-man band. He's got a lot of followers for good reason, because everyone else thinks everyone else is on the nose. But in fact, he's got to start listening to other people and what they have to say and why they're saying it, and where they. And it doesn't matter what he thinks. It's what the people are going to put their vote in the box that's going to cost. That's what they're trying to persuade.
But Alec, you, I mean, they're going to vote for his policies also. Well, you would think so anyway. Just, fairly brief, but you've got a bit of time to enunciate and prosecute your case. Are all of his policies achievable? I mean, I look at, first of all, just the 600,000 he'll get rid of. We'll talk about that soon. That is impossible. And Lieutenant Colonel Alistair Pope, retired, will tell us why. Didn't work for Australia. It's not going to work for anyone. But just his policies, are they achievable?
I think they're achievable if there's two criteria met. One, the people that are in government have the spine to do it. The character of the people in office really does matter. But also the preparedness of the person taking office to implement the policy. It's all well and good typing on Twitter, we must mass deport hundreds of thousands of people. But if you're not working with professional people to actually flesh out a proper plan to do that, it's going to be very difficult to happen. Everybody talks about the blob, everybody talks about the civil service, which is entrenched with liberal progressives that will try and obfuscate and frustrate you at every turn. Of course, as well, this is radical politics going up against the liberal status quo, which is to not deport even people who are foreign criminals, even though that's supposed to be happening. If you've never been in government before, you're going to find it very difficult. You're going to have to learn how to pull all the levers of power. So you better have a plan. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm quite overwhelmed with not just Restore, but to be honest, most people on the right in this country. There is a serious lack of, seriousness in terms of policy and strategy for how to actually achieve these mass deportations. And the other thing I'll say as well about the mass deportations is that's all well and good having mass deportations of illegal immigrants, but obviously we need mass remigration of legal migrants that have come over in droves over the past few decades. We have yet to see a serious policy from any other party aside from the Homeland Party on how that is going to be achieved. How are we going to reverse the terrible demographic change in the United Kingdom, which is dispossessing the English, Scottish and Welsh and Scots-Irish people of their sovereignty and self-determination?
Catherine, it is debatable whether he'll see the full term, but it's not debatable, though, I think, for the next 3 and a bit years. You're still going to have Labor there. The last thing they would ever do is call an election, because at this stage they're on the nose, as Alistair said. However, back to Nigel, they're going to be pretty hard politically to get everything through. Which ones do you think will be the hardest, or which maybe one or two policies for Nigel to actually achieve?
Okay, well, let's make a couple of points. Number one is it is possible that the Labour government may even extend the term. So we used to have 7-year terms, and there would be the ability to have legislation. And you've seen what they've done with the local elections where they tried to cancel them and then reverse them. So it may be 2031 and not 2029. The second point I would make is that actually Restore have written one of the most detailed immigration papers already. It's over 100 pages long. There's a lot of misinformation going around, including what Nigel said yesterday. Nobody's reading it. Nobody, I think, even knows that it exists. So it is one of the most thorough approaches to immigration that has been there. In terms of Nigel, I mean, it's the same thing. Nigel has had something like 60 councillors out of the ones that he had appointed have either left of their own accord, gone to different parties, or have been chucked out. And if we go back, Nigel has had a terrible, terrible record of managing to keep people in his own parties. When he was in the Brexit party, the UKIP, he used to arrive with about 15 MEPs at the start of a 5-year term, and he would be down to 5 to 6 after a few years. He would, and including myself, I mean, if you literally say many of the things that have even been said on today, you will be chucked out. We had one councillor recently chucked out for saying that the Bell Hotel in Epping, which is one of the hot spots for demonstrations for illegal migrants, it was a paedophile hotel. Well, it may not be strictly correct, but the whole thing kicked off when an illegal assaulted an underage girl. Nigel is weak, and I think Nigel has made some catastrophic errors, including, and he's done it right from the start, from people like Godfrey Bloom to myself to Rupert Lowe. There are hundreds of us who have been chucked out for saying what I would call the bleeding obvious, not for being nasty or anything else. And now this basically reincarnation of the Conservative Party is not going to be missed. People will see it. He has brought in some of the people who have been the most responsible for the Boris wave, for the hotels, for the Afghans. And that's how he's progressed. And I think he's going to catastrophically fail. And this idea about splitting the vote, let's remember, we have a Labour government because Nigel split the vote. We would have had a Conservative government if it hadn't been for Nigel. We got this government because everybody was so fed up. The country is mad, furious, and it's so volatile that 30-40% can move on a dime between one party and the other. The other thing to remember is there are many people who don't vote at all. We have about 50% of the population. If you look at the number of people who aren't registered to vote and the number of people who didn't vote, Labour won on about 17% of the population. So if you've got moves of 20, 30, 40%, it's not going to take a lot to get a radical change. And people, including, I know Alex does, and myself, and millions of others want the radical change. And we also think that if we don't get this radical change now, the demographic is going to be so awful that we won't ever be able to get it. Because we've got people on the right dying, we've got people being imported, and you saw what happened in Spain where they decided to, what they said was 500,000 illegals they were going to make legal. They are now talking about 1.3 million. It would not be impossible for the Labour government to implement something and produce another 2 million voters. So we have to do this now. This is the last chance saloon.
Can I, before we pop into Lieutenant Colonel Pope, who's a stronger leader, do you think, Rupert Lowe or Nigel? I don't think Nigel's a strong leader, and his past or his history would support that. And when it gets to the deportation, if you had a choice between Nigel and Rupert, I would put my money on Rupert. Is he a stronger leader than Nigel?
Yes, because he doesn't waver around. I mean, I and many people in the country, I started off probably as a sort of soggy liberal. I didn't vote at all, and I have progressively moved. And even my position now, compared to 6 years ago, is very different. I'm moving, and most of the country is moving right, and yet Nigel is moving left and going to the centre. He just wavers. Literally 1 minute he will say it's too difficult to deport even illegals, and then the next minute, when he sees that there's a backlash going on, he'll say the opposite. He moves. He's like Starmer. He moves. He moved on the child benefit issue. 1 minute he was saying he's going to have it, and the next minute he wasn't. People like myself and Alex, we don't move. We're in the same position. We disagree with that benefits because we know that the people with big families are Muslim and immigrant families, and those we will end up with an even further problem with budget deficits, etc. So Nigel just has you wonder what his core is. It's just opportunism.
Yep, I think so. It makes us appreciate Anthony Albanese. No, it doesn't. I could never. Could never. Sorry, Lieutenant Colonel. I see Alan there, about to have a heart attack. Can I? One of the policies of that, and you are right. Also, Catherine, he does. It does. The numbers change at times, but he said on day one he'll get rid of 600,000 illegals. We had and it was very, very well known around the world. We had stopped the boats, and we did stop the boats, and we sent them to, I think it was to an island that was made by bird poop.
Nauru.
No, it wasn't. Nauru. It was Nauru, yes. And so we sent them there, and the idea was to send them back. Alistair, can you tell us, just to bring everybody up to speed, some of the flaws with that, and fairly brief, because we've got a whole bunch of things to talk about.
Yeah, okay. We did, in fact, come to an agreement. We paid the Nauru government about $2 million so we could actually park people there. Now, the usual crowd actually said, this is a horrible place to send them. It's tropical, it's hot, it's got no facilities, etc. They were actually living in quite luxurious conditions. And I've never been to Nauru, but I've been to other places where they'd actually put up the migrants. Anyway, the fact was, we did that, and then we got down to most people actually being returned to their home countries or being sent to third countries. For instance, New Zealand decided it was terrible that we were keeping them on this tropical island, which I'd be happy to live on. And so New Zealand took in some, Canada took in some, the UK managed to take some off our hands, and some went back to their own countries. Now, we ended up with one man who was there for 7 years. And then along came an activist judge who said, you can't keep him there forever. By the way, he refused to say, he couldn't speak half the languages. He said he was, I belong to such and such, and then he couldn't speak the language there. He didn't know the currency of the country he's supposed to have come from. So he just sat there basically alone. He was allowed to walk anywhere he wanted on the island. He was looked after, had his own personal cook virtually. And eventually an activist judge came along and said, this is against human rights. You've got to pay him compensation and let him off the island. So he was eventually let into Australia because nobody else would take him. Now, one other thing actually mentioned there by Catherine that was interesting, we had a party in Australia run by a fellow called Corey Bernardi. Now, Corey was a defector from the Liberal Party in Australia, which is your Conservative Party. And he then formed his own party, and he started gathering up all these people. And I wrote to him and I said, Corey, you got to stop doing this. You might as well call yourself the Judas Party. Everyone you've picked up is a traitor to somewhere else that already put them into Parliament. So the Liberals had actually spent all this money getting someone elected, and then the guy said, I don't want to be a Liberal anymore, I'll go and join Corey. And he had 9 people that he put up for the next election, not one of them won. So the Judas thing, and that's exactly what Catherine's pointed out, Farage is picking up all the failed people from the Conservative Party and saying, yes, come across and join me, and we'll fail in under a different banner. It's ridiculous. You've got to start finding some new people, and Rupert Lowe is very much a new person. I've actually watched about a 1 hour talk by him. It's the only time I'd come across him, actually, and it was pointed out to me. And I listened to him for about an hour, and he made a lot of sense because, as Catherine said, he actually didn't mess around. He actually had coherent policies. He spoke in a normal manner and actually was quite convincing that, okay, you might not like what, and he said this is going to be hard. But because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't even try. And we need to succeed, otherwise we won't have a country left in 50 years. And he's quite right. And so I would support him. As for Farage, which way is the wind blowing today? What does he think the population wants to hear? Okay. Well, this morning they wanted to hear this, but by the afternoon they want to hear something else. But he's right on it. That's his new policy. And that's the problem, actually. I've noticed that he does change around. He is very articulate. And some of his speeches I really do like. But when it comes down to what does he really stand for? Maybe he should call himself the Jellyfish Party. No backbone.
Alec, Catherine mentioned, which is horrific, that Labor could vote for an extra 2 years. I would say if you were to put money on it, they will probably extend for another 2 years because they do stand a chance of not going anywhere. The other thing that Catherine mentioned also, and I think you alluded to that, the Spanish, anointed, you're all Spaniards now. Don't forget to give us your vote because we love you. We love you. Gracias. And then I mentioned taco the other day, and they said, no, that's Mexico. And I said, well, they have Mexican restaurants in Spain. But how do you see the chances of Labor? They've got to vote, of course. Yep, we'll do it. Extending for another 2 years, which again is horrific. And anybody out there, even with Nigel's reform or any of the other parties, they would have fallen flat on their back. Oh, not another 2 years. But how do you see that going? Do you think they will? And secondly, the idea of anointing a couple of million illegals. Come in, here's your papers. Don't forget to give me your vote from of course, the Labor Party. How do you see that going? Do you think this is reality?
Well, the Labour Party are completely shameless, so it is the sort of move I would expect them to make, or at least wouldn't be surprised if they did. But yeah, in regards to giving illegal immigrants the right to vote, I mean, we're already doing that in this country where these small boat migrants come over and we just grant the vast majority of them asylum, even though we know, just look at them. These are not people running or fleeing from war. Okay, these are military aged men, able-bodied. The question is like, where are their families and all the rest of it? Where are the women and children if they're fleeing war for a better life or for their safety? So yeah, these are all very big concerns in terms of elections and what have you. But I think to be optimistic, to be positive, is even if Labour do these shenanigans, what we would call gerrymandering the electorate and delaying elections and what have you. This is almost certainly the last ever Labour government that we'll have, and that's why they would do these sorts of things, is because they know that their goose is cooked. So there's at least some positivity there, even if they do try and obviously overtly tinker with our democracy to what would effectively get them a few more years in power.
But in that time, Catherine, first of all, by that stage, Nigel is working for ITV or BBC doing his game show. They've got an extra 2 years, a couple of things. One, they can do all the ugly stuff now. They can anoint, you have new citizens just by drinking the Kool-Aid, and you still have all that extra time for people to settle down and for the UK to become the EU, which again, you must feel like hitting the bottle at the moment when you hear that, because you voted not to do that. and he's going to do it. They're standing out like dogs' gonads, as they would say. What's your views on that? And if you wouldn't mind, it is a family show, so keep it nice.
Well, I think the other issue with Nigel and Nigel's supporters is that they're mostly old and they're also dying off. And there's no succession. If Nigel thinks that if something happens to him or he does become a game show host, that boring Tice or Mohammed Zia Youssef, people are going to vote for them, then he's ridiculously mistaken, because they're not. And they're not going to vote for any of the Tory defects. Well, they're defective and yes. But the thing I think about Rupert is that Rupert's got a lot of young guys and a lot of young people. I mean, I'm one of the older people, but in general, his people are young and they're going to carry this on. And those are the people who have the energy behind them. And I think we're going to have radical change, and radical change has happened before. It's happened in Japan. I know Japan is a more homogenous society. It happened in Argentina. Argentina's had absolutely radical economic and social change. And, the time is now, and the momentum is just unbelievable.
Alistair, if the UK keeps going through these changes and losing its culture, which it is, and if we have Labor in power till 31, how do you think the landscape will be in the UK?
I just had my bucket list tour of the UK, and of course went back to Scotland. Oh, by the way, I found out that the only growth industry in Scotland is parking inspector. But
that's great. They could export that.
Yeah, but no. The thing is that it's changing to such an extent you won't be able to change it back. Have a look at history. How did it work out when the Angles and the Jutes started coming across and the Danelaw was founded and we said, okay, we'll draw a line here and you lot can have that side of the country and we'll have the rest. It only took about 500 years for them to actually integrate. I mean, most of the kings of England didn't actually speak English. And that went right on until probably about the 14th century, 15th century. So you're looking at a change here that will take place that will convert parts of the country into virtually clans, as we had in Scotland, which were a horrible bloody thing. We were the last feudal society in Europe. You will have that sort of division where you will not be able to go into many towns. They'll be like the French bagnoles. You will not be welcome in those towns and it will be dangerous to go there. And so you'll find the country is actually breaking down into enclaves. And there's no way back from that. Because once you've got an enclave that says we're an ethnic or religious or whatever group, doesn't matter for what reason they've done it, if they do that, you will not be able to get back from there. And the country will break down. I mean, have a look at Dresden in Germany, which has now asked that it be excised from Germany and become an Islamic state within Germany. The Islamic Islamic state of Dresden. Can you imagine that? It needs to be bombed again.
Fairly strong words there. But I mean, but again, though, the sentiment is understood. Probably the application is not at all. A couple of B50. No, sorry. So, Alec, what's your party? What is the your party's view on this, on immigration? How do you think we need to fix it? How do we stop the illegals coming in? How do we get back the culture of the UK? Because the more of these immigrants coming in, invading, and it is an invasion of the UK, but no shots fired yet, unless you're then you're going to get shot. How do you fix it, Alec? You need to turn your microphone on. That's a thing.
Sorry.
There you are.
Obviously, I'm of the Homeland Party. We are very well known for our staunch position of remigration, that is, to reverse the demographic change that has taken place over the decades in our country. And I'm afraid that's the only way that we can preserve our identity, our culture, our way of life. because by having millions of foreigners in our home, it means that we cannot express ourselves. Of course, you've got all of this legislation as well, like the hate speech laws and what have you, that stop us being able to express ourselves and live as we would. That's all got to go. But it's really remigration is key. Now, obviously, you've had the Restore Britain party launch, and they talk about mass deportations of illegal immigrants, which any sensible party should be on board with. But they still are very cagey around remigration. Their spokesperson, Charlie Downs, will use the term remigration, which is great. Obviously, I think it's fantastic. I think that's an absolute success of the Homeland Party if an increasing number of people in the political discourse in this country adopt that term. But the leader, Rupert Lowe, is still yet to use the term, if he will at all. But this is the defining issue of our age. It is remigration. It is to reverse the demographic change. It is to encourage all of these immigrants that were imposed on us against our will. We never voted to change our country, our way of life. And so what's really important is remembering that we are a people, that the British people are the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, the Scots, the Northern Irish, right? We need to remember who we are. That's the first step. And once you've done that, only then can you start to reassert your political sovereignty and pursue self-determination. And that, you know, this is the kind of language, these are the sort of ideas that I'm not hearing from other commentators or from other political parties. But this is what is absolutely vital if you want to secure the destiny of our people and our culture and our way of life, preserve our heritage, and if you want to stop things like encroaching Sharia law and Islamization of the UK and all of these things, you have to back remigration, and we can't just skirt around the issue. People need to just come out and say it. They need to say who our people are and that we're unapologetic about pursuing the policy of remigration.
Catherine.
Well, going on the whole subject, the first thing is that I think it's slightly different from a whole pile of clans. We have one clan in Britain, and that is the Muslim group, particularly the Pakistanis combined with the Bangladeshis and other Muslims. But we have this diaspora from the entire world. So if we take the Nepalese, who are a small country, say the Sri Lankans and the Vietnamese and the Jamaicans, the Cubans, these are all completely separate groups and they move in and out of the country. It's fluid. And a lot of this, and I believe economics is a great way to get people to do things. If the economic environment becomes difficult, that if you don't speak English, you will get no help. If you you won't, we've been already talking about people who are on unemployment benefit, that there will be no issuance of passports whatsoever. There will be no way that you will become a resident. There will be no way that you can become that you can claim benefits. So I don't see it as quite as gloomy. I see the Islamic problem as appalling, and that will be the enclave. And effectively, we've already got that in many towns. But the rest of it, we've not just got 200 countries in our country, but we have all the subsects of those countries. So I've talked about Nepal in detail, but Nepal is tiny. It's got 30 million people, and it's got 70 ethnic groups with different languages, and some of them hardly talk to each other. You could say the same about Kenya or many countries. So these are not just one mass group. And already we have people who live between two countries. That's why I hate dual nationality so much. They use the tax benefits of both countries, the social security benefits of both countries. So I think it's very easy to clamp down on some of these things, which will make life more difficult. And the start is dual nationality. And many countries in the world don't allow dual nationality. So I'll give you again the example of Nepal. You are either British or you're not Nepalese. You're not both. Um, and we, this is the crux of this issue. So I see other methods, and I think we have a major issue just to get rid of we've talked about the difficulty with the government, difficulty with the civil service, with activist judges. I think we need to do it in steps. We simply can't say we'll remigrate 20 million people. We need to make the economic and social environment, and that would include things like banning the burqa, banning halal, banning cousin marriage, that you either fit in or you will want to leave. So let's look at it and try. I think I would like to look at it in a sort of slightly more positive way, that all is not lost, and that with the right government that we will do something and we can do something.
Alistair, and I appreciate it, and also probably back you with the all is not lost, but it's not far from it. What's your thoughts, Alistair?
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with actual migration, because my next door neighbour is a Malaysian Chinese doctor. My neighbour on the other side is Greek. Across the road are Indians. Just up the road is actually an Afghan. So my street is quite cosmopolitan. But see, we're all civilized. We all have jobs. We're all at the high end of the, not just the economic, but you might say the social scale. We have street parties, believe it or not, for all these people, and everyone sort of integrates. The Afghan Muslim up the road there actually puts up Christmas decorations. You probably get crucified for that, but what you're really looking at is bringing in some civilized people. It's the barbarians that's the problem, and those who are the fanatics, and that's what is not being separated out. By the way, my wife is Vietnamese, and my parents actually preferred her to me, which I can't quite understand, but then again...
Oh, we can.
You can. Mike knows me a bit better. But, I think it's the type of people you're allowing in, who are coming in. They're not being allowed in, they're just turning up. And then they create all these problems. I mean, just look at the problems we're having in Australia now with terrorism. And every one of those terrorist acts is being committed by an Islamist. And yet we brought in 2,600 from Gaza, no security vetting whatsoever. We brought in 30,000, and they were all given not just visas but citizenship, so they could all vote for the right party, which was the Labour Party. Sorry?
Nothing. You're hearing things. So we're still going. Alec, I just want to ask you this. We're actually going. There's some crosstalk there. Alec, what about the using your navy to turn back this I suppose exaggerated armada that's coming up? It's just a boat here or a couple of boats there and there. And what about using the navy and saying, that's it, you're not going to get to the UK? You then have to pick them up and put them somewhere. I don't know where you would put them, but at least you would stop them from getting into the UK. And Australia did that too. And Alistair might like to add just a titch later on that, but we used our navy to turn back the boats. What about the UK doing the same thing?
Yeah, it should almost certainly be an option that is used. But if an illegal migrant does set foot on our shores, then in that case, you just have to obviously lock them up and tell them they're not going anywhere until they get on a plane and go back to where they came from. So, there's numerous ways that we can deal with this. It's only this adherence to human rights dogma that is stopping us from being able to deal with the issue. I just like to challenge Alistair a little bit there about immigration, because the issue is, even if you have a criteria to have what we might call high quality immigration, to have people that want to come to a country and integrate into the culture and way of life and don't hate us and what have you, that all seems fine. But if we look at a lot of the problems in, just say, in Britain, with Islamic extremism or knife crime, this isn't first generation immigrants doing this. It's the descendants of immigrants. It's the second generation. It's the third generation. So it's all well and good having immigrants that come over that, as I say, want to integrate like your country. But the problem is when you change the ethnic makeup of a country, that is when you get this lack of social cohesion. This is when you have these problems with identity, and then it breaks down into balkanization, and you just get all of this social friction. So I'm afraid that I really take issue with this idea of kind of managed migration, and I take the position that pretty much all migration is unhealthy and damaging to the nation.
Alistair, you got 60 seconds.
Okay, how do you explain the fact that after World War II, Australia brought in hundreds of thousands of people from the Baltic states, from Germany, from everywhere, and they all integrated because a program there was to integrate them. They had to learn English. They had to go and take jobs that the governments gave them. So a lot of people worked out in the middle of nowhere. They went out to work on the railways out in the outback. All of that was taken care of. And all of those people ended up intermarrying, so that there is no Italian community anymore. In fact, just up the road there's a Hungarian centre. And I've been a member of 3 different clubs, the Latvian club, the Danish club, and, because they want to talk their own language, do their own thing. But the 1 in 4 marriages in Australia is interracial, and most of those marriages are successful. I mean, I've been married now to a Vietnamese for 50 years. Well, but will it last? Who knows? The thing is I think you're wrong in saying it's got to be us English marrying us English or us Scots marrying us Welsh or something. That's wrong. It doesn't matter who you marry, providing they're actually going to be civilized people. And the problem is, Islam is not a part of civilization. That's what I object to. And by the way, when I was growing up, there was one person, he was from Jamaica, married a Scots girl, lived in our street, was a very quiet guy. They had a couple of kids, no racial tension between any of us, but they were just accepted as just other kids in the street. And my soccer team's got one black kid in it who actually ended up playing soccer for Scotland. And he was so good. By the way, I was the worst player on the team. My father was the coach. So what you have there is I don't think you should discriminate on any of those things if people can actually integrate in. If an Italian marries a Greek or a Turk or something else, I don't care. And in fact, I said I've been married to Vietnamese and I've never had a problem. Maybe it's because I got a bad attitude.
We have a very short time now, about a minute and a half to go. Catherine, you have the final say.
It's all about passports, in my opinion. It's not about if we hadn't given out the passports, and we should stop giving out passports. There are plenty of countries who make immigration work for them. I would go as far, I've lived and worked in Singapore, where you have differential wage rates for onshore people and offshore people. We're very happy to import a T-shirt made with somebody earning 50p an hour, but we're not happy to have it onshore. And that is the issue. It's about passports. You can't tell what the second generation are doing, but if somebody misbehaves or doesn't integrate, you need to be able to chuck them out. And China issues less passports in a year than we issue in an afternoon.
As we are about to wind up, Alec, if somebody wants to find out more about your party, tell us how they can do that, or about you.
They can follow the Homeland Party on social media, so just give it a search. They can also go to homelandparty.org and look at the Our Thinking page on our website to get more of a flavour of where we're coming from on things. You can follow me on social media at Alec Cave.
And what about you, Catherine?
Right, I'm helping Rupert now, and my Twitter is Blakelock, BLAIKLOCK, BP for the Brexit Party, because I still haven't changed it. Okay, on X, yeah, thank you.
And we can talk to Rupert soon, I would hope.
I doubt it. And the reason is he's just asked by thousands of people. So he's even turned down CPAC in Texas because he hasn't got time to do it. So.
That's actually not a bad thing. Alistair, if somebody wants to find out about you, how do they do that?
Well, just you've got my email address. You can post it somewhere. I tend not to give it out because you get too many trolls.
Yeah, you do.
And I haven't changed my email address in sort of 20 years.
And what about X? Are you on X?
No, I don't go into any social media. I'm not on Facebook, not on any of those things.
So we just go to the TV and see Australia's least wanted.
Yeah.
Good on you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. Alec, Catherine, and also the Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you so much for your time. This has been The Protagonists. Coming up next, The World Today.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Iranian officials said general agreements were reached during U.S.-mediated nuclear talks in Geneva on February 17th. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated the sides agreed on guiding principles and would proceed accordingly, though drafting a final deal would be complex and no timeline was set. He said progress was better than in previous talks, and Iran would continue discussions with the International Atomic Energy Agency, whose chief met Araghchi a day earlier. Talks follow Iran's suspension of IAEA cooperation after U.S. strikes on its nuclear sites in 2025. As negotiations unfolded, Iran conducted military drills in the Strait of Hormuz, while Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei issued defiant warnings toward the United States. Iran fired live missiles into the Strait of Hormuz during military drills as U.S. envoys held indirect nuclear talks with Iranian officials in Geneva. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said the exercises demonstrated readiness to close the vital oil transit route through which about 20% of global supply passes. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned U.S. warships could be sent to the bottom of the sea, while President Trump said Iran wants a deal but would face serious consequences if talks fail. The U.S. has increased military deployments in the region as part of what officials describe as a dual-track strategy of diplomacy and deterrence. Ukraine is reportedly using veteran NATO pilots as civilian contractors to secretly fly donated U.S.-made F-16 fighter jets, according to France's Intelligence Online, a claim Kyiv denies. The squadron, said to include former U.S. and Dutch Air Force personnel, focuses on intercepting Russian long-range weapons and operates outside Ukraine's military chain of command. Ukraine has faced pilot shortages and training challenges since receiving F-16s in August of 2024, with several acknowledged losses. Moscow views the conflict as a NATO proxy war and alleges Western personnel are deeply involved in supporting Ukraine's military operations. About 100 U.S. troops have been deployed to Nigeria in an advisory and training role at Nigeria's request, according to the country's defense ministry. The troops will provide military training, technical support, and intelligence sharing to help Nigerian forces counter extremist groups, but will not engage in combat. The move follows U.S. airstrikes in December against ISIS in northwest Nigeria, ordered by President Trump. Trump has warned of escalating violence against Christians and designated Nigeria a country of particular concern, while Nigerian officials deny claims of widespread religious persecution. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Seneca seized 17,700 pounds of cocaine worth more than $133 million during 4 interdictions in the Eastern Pacific and offloaded the drugs at Fort Everglades, Florida. The operations, conducted under Operation Pacific Viper with support from U.S. Southern Command's Joint Interagency Task Force, SOUTH, targeted vessels in international waters. Additional seizures near Florida totaled $5.6 million. The Coast Guard also interdicted suspected illegal migrants near California and Puerto Rico. Officials said maritime interdiction is key to stopping U.S.-bound narcotics and protecting communities from transnational criminal organizations. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said Australia will not repatriate 34 women and children in Syria with alleged Islamic State ties after Syrian authorities blocked their departure due to procedural issues.
Undermine, destroy our way of life. And so, as my mother would say, you make your bed, you lie in it. It's unfortunate that children are impacted by this as well. But we are not providing any support. And if anyone does manage to find their way back to Australia, then they'll face the full force of the law if any laws have been broken.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Right now, somewhere in Nigeria, there's a Christian family being persecuted. Those who are not killed are often forced to flee their homes. At Equipping the Persecuted, they're committed to reaching every affected area and help heal the deep physical and emotional wounds that have been inflicted upon them. But they can't help them without your support. So please visit equippingthepersecuted.org and donate today. Sign up for just $35 a month. It's a little over $1 a day, and you'll help rescue Christians who are suffering and provide security, medical care, food, shelter, and love. The situation is urgent, so I'm asking you to join in the next 10 minutes. It's a life of fear and danger for these Christians, but for just over $1 a day, you can change everything. Go online to equippingthepersecuted.org and make a difference in the life of a persecuted Christian. That's www.equippingthepersecuted.org.
Everyone has a reason. It could be good grub, your liquid gold, or more golden years. For someone you know, for parents you don't, or because 1 in 3 of us will need blood in our lifetime. For every reason to become a donor, there's an even bigger reason. Life.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the volunteer manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions, or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important and special to this shelter because they support us in caring for thousands of animals each year. The impact they have enables us to do far more for the animals than we would be able to. For example, we can get on top of the huge amount of laundry we have. So the volunteers allow us to clean thousands more blankets than we could. It's incredible the amount of gifts that we're given by the public. We're so grateful for it. So if we get some toys, we can give them directly to puppies straight away to play with, or towels, we can take them to our vet hospital for them to use immediately. So it's a really important job to help staff with. I would say to someone who's interested in volunteering to please get in touch. We would love to hear from you. We have an application form on our website that you can fill in, so please just detail all your skills and experience you can offer the shelter, and we'll be in touch when a suitable role comes up.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Welcome back to the World Today, 10 after 8 in the UK, in Queensland 10 after 6, 10 after 7, New South and Victoria. So I'm just checking here, just making sure there's no white supremacist or other people hiding under the desk. A bit like the US. Remember, there's a communist there somewhere. Check under your desk. Why am I talking about this? Let me first of all play you this clip from Australia's pretend Prime Minister.
The threats that are out there to security from a rise in a range of areas are very real, whether it be anti-Semitism, whether it be a white supremacist ideology, which this person was radicalised down, or whether it be sovereign citizens. I've been to funerals of police officers in Queensland and Victoria who were killed by people who don't recognise the state. We need to isolate these ideological extremes, and we need to reassert our values as Australians, and this was a horrific attack on First Nations people that could have had catastrophic consequences had it been successful.
Today, the Prime Minister singled out those white supremacists and sovereign citizens as ideological extremes that presented security threats to Australia. Is the Prime Minister telegraphing an intention of targeting these relatively unknown groups under new hate speech laws? These groups were not responsible for the recent Bondi attack. So it's strange they should be identified. Wonder why. I wonder if Tony Burke had anything to do with this. Instead of playing cheap politics, the government should let law enforcement and responsible agencies to deal with these real security threats. Now, Wayne Glue is a former WA Australian police officer who is knowledgeable about the sovereign citizens movement. He is also very aware of some of the myths circulating about this movement. Wayne, thanks for joining us. Oops, we're not there. Let me just move you up to one here, and I'm just going to put you into a spot, if I can just find it. There you are. Thanks, Cam. He's good. He's working very hard.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Wayne. Can you, first of all, just tell me, and you would have seen the Prime Minister warning us about these terrible people, these white supremacists and these sovereign citizens, Martians, people from Uranus, all these. Can you tell us the reality, please?
Well, the reality is every single politician in this country is pushing for a one world government, meaning they are joining United Nations, WEF, WHO, and they're trying to force us into it. So they've become citizens of those groups. And then you come back here and Toomey, a professor, according to her, I'm not going to argue that point with her anyway, because you can't argue. The fact of the matter is, these people have set themselves up as supreme, above the people in this country. All the politicians have. So the sovereign citizens are actually all the political parties and the politicians who claim to be above both houses of parliament. When the constitution is clear, they are not. That's just a myth. Now, I've looked into a lot of things. I did pass a few comments in relation to Desi Freeman and how they handled his investigation. And from a police officer's point of view, I would have sacked half the clowns that were there because of the stupidity of what went on. Half of the stuff that was put on there was 5 different stories, or 6, and a couple where a particular sergeant was told by Desi, you can't be here under your own act. And he read it to him, and she said, I don't care, I'm going to arrest you anyway. That's when you run away near that bridge in the park. And he was well and truly within his rights. To me, a sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. You can't be sovereign in your own right, which is independent and totally in control of yourself, and be a citizen, which is under the control of others. And in this country, the supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable authority belongs to us, the people. Our Constitution states that. Now, if that's the case, and it is, you look at what the politicians are doing, and you have to have a laugh. You really do, especially with Albanese. One minute he's discussing the last so-called prime minister, and the next day he gets questioned. He said, I never said that. And even when they played it back, he still denied it. I mean,
just for
is
context,
this guy real, or is it short of a few short points? I mean, he's crazy.
Just for context, Wayne, you were a WA copper, and I would think a very good copper. I can say that because I used to get a clip across the ears from my dad whenever I called a policeman a copper, because he was one. But I can do that now because he was a long way from me. But just tell me what you've done since you left the WA police force.
Well, before and during and after, I've studied the Constitution for almost 57 years. And I'm pretty conversant with it, even if I do say so myself. I was born with a good memory, and I put it to good use. And anybody who listens to my videos knows I very rarely read from the book unless I want to show people clearly where a particular authority comes for or where it's denied. I don't pat myself on the back. I'm just me. After leaving the police force, I couldn't do anything for about years. I fractured my spine and a few ribs and a few other bones, and they boarded me up medically unfit. So I thought about studying more about the law, and I became a Commonwealth public official on the 16th of January 2012. I was sworn through the Court of Faculties England. But I assist people in putting together their paperwork for courts, because I spent 2 years in prosecuting, and I learned how the system works. I've taken up on several issues, especially local government, and defeated them in 2019 in the Magistrates Court, Geraldton. The magistrate ended up, after telling him he couldn't give them all the orders they wanted, and he said, I can't give you an order in relation to his land because I don't have the authority. And then after I chucked the Green Constitution on the desk and said, this book's going to put you behind bars for the rest of your life, he grabbed his stuff and took off out of the court. So he abandoned the court. And I mean, I didn't do it to belittle him. I just showed him in the law where he was wrong. I mean, the Constitution is very clear. We've got 2 tiers of government, federal and state. The local government was, and Anne Toomey says the local government was here before Federation. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Because it was the local government of the British Parliament to each of the colonies. 6 colonies. They all had a local government from England, along with their own governor and their own constitutions. Now, they say, oh, no, the Constitution says, well, for years they said they denied the Constitution contained local government. But on page 936, the eighth line down from the top, it says the state is allowed to create municipal authorities, which is roads boards and councils and such like, and local government being the state parliaments. Now, everybody thought, we're hunky-dory, we can do this, we can do that. But then they come along, and Western Australia never put its lawful state constitution in place. At Federation, they put one in place with 32 sections missing, and it's still there. No matter how many times you tell them, they ignore it. But every single state by 1974 had removed and replaced their constitutions. So where did they get the authority? From what parliament in what state did they get the authority to add local government to the state constitutions? You've got to bear in mind every state constitution is a letters patent. Only the reigning monarch can change a letters patent. or interfere with it in any way. All imperial law applies in this country subject to the Colonial Laws Validity Act. And in fact, our annotated version of the Constitution, which is the Hansard of our Constitution, even though a lot of people deny it, the High Court used it up until about 2027. No, 2007, sorry, not 20. I'm getting a bit older here. So you go back to that. The fact of the matter is, local government is unlawful. We never gave them permission. We told them no to the continuance, no to the establishment. That's the end of it. Roads boards were always there. They were paid out of consolidated revenue. The reason I know that, because when I was young, my dad contracted to the roads boards along with a group of other people building roads on footpaths and that in all the country towns. So I know very well how they work and where the money comes from because we were being paid from there. So from the system we've got now, and nobody, according to Albanese, he thinks that we don't have the right to say anything. Well, what I'd like him to do is show me in the Constitution where there is any reference to a Prime Minister, because it's not there. Where does it give the Parliament supremacy when it clearly says the Parliament is not supreme, and the very essence of federation is that that must be so? Parliament, like everybody else, is subject to the law and must abide by it. And if you look up further on that same page, it says the Constitution is above both houses of Parliament. So how can it be outside or above the source of its authority to exist, which is our Constitution? There's a lot goes into it, but on page 791 it says clearly neither the federal nor the state parliament are sovereign bodies. They're only legislatures with limited authority. So what it really means, if we're sovereign and supreme in our own right, we have the supreme, absolute and uncontrollable authority remains with us. So in fact, when you look at America, they've got a president. They've got all their parliament, they've got their own Bill of Rights and everything else. That was all by agreement with England. They never broke away from England until when Trump decided he was going to do that and go back to his republic, which was always there, just concealed. Like the Commonwealth of Australia is always here, just concealed from us. And they run Australia under a company registered in America, and they can tell all the lies they like. It's registered with the US Securities Exchange Commission. The number is 0000805157. And they've issued perspective, which means they've got shares in this company. Now, if we've got a Commonwealth, if the people are sovereign and supreme, and they are, the only time they've ever tried, apart from the slimy ways they've tried, to get us into a republic, they had a referendum in 1999. And what a lot of people don't realise, and I don't make it really public because I'm using what they're doing against them, the Green Constitution, they put that back in place when we voted to retain ours. So that's what they did. It's a big cover-up where they want people to believe the green one is authorised. But sorry, Dr. John Quick and Sir Robert Garran died, both of them, by 1957. Okay. One in 1935 and one in 1957. So no one authorised anything. And Albanese is setting himself up as a be-all and know-all. Well, it might be a know-all in colloquial expression where you know nothing.
Can I don't mean to be. We've got limited time, so I want to ask you a whole bunch of questions, and I'm really taking what you have to say in. So, not trying to be rude at all, but Anthony Albanese said that white supremacists and sovereign citizens are a danger to the security of Australia. And he used an example with Desi Freeman, and used an example in Queensland when there was a Gareth Train and the family were killed. Two police were killed too. The coroner described them as, they said they were psychotic. And I've just got to find out where he said, anyway, they were psychotic, but they believed in what they were doing, even though it was wrong, was justified. So Anthony Albanese has used the Desi Freeman example and has used the train example also from Gareth Train as examples of how bad sovereign citizens are. I've always said that because two people do terrible things, it does not mean that the rest are to blame. It's just two people doing terrible things. And we won't go into all the other stories about what actually did go on and what others think did go on. We do know, though, that there were many people killed, and so that's not so good. But for Anthony Albanese to be using the scare tactic, and it is a scare tactic, that all sovereign citizen believers, members, whatever you want to call it, of this particular movement, if there is a movement, but these people, for having an interest in this and believing this, they're all then regarded as potential murderers, and to be put in the same barrel as white supremacists. I also think that's a bit rich. Now, just briefly, because there is a lot of ignorance at the moment, and I get sucked in also. The ignorance is spread by media, whether it's independent or legacy media. Not that many people understand it. Tell us very briefly what the sovereign citizen person, or if there is such a movement, which is highly it's debatable. But what is a sovereign citizen? What do they believe? Are they a danger? And even though he's used the two examples of those police and others being killed, it weren't sovereign citizens that killed people in Bondi. So you weren't blamed for that. So tell me briefly what a sovereign citizen person is, and are you a danger to Australia?
Well, I don't know what Albanese's version of a sovereign citizen is, because it's an oxymoron. But having said that, they borrowed the name and have attached it to groups here who, and some of them are way out there. They have ideas which are different to the law. I'm not a sovereign citizen. I'm nothing but a subject of the reigning monarch. I was born here, bred here, and my whole background is to uphold and put forward the law. I know there's groups. I have addressed those groups. Those groups have pretty well all fallen in line with our law, our constitution, which is the supreme law. And for Albanese to come out and say that would be akin to saying, well, your parents and grandparents were absolute criminals. They got criminal records, so then you've got to be the same. But see, I've spoken to these groups as a bunch of people. I actually addressed them and said, whatever you want to know about the Constitution and the laws of this country that are actual law, not some of these acts and statutes which are not law. And I said, I will not get involved in your groups because you have your own ideals and I'm not going to cut across them. On the same token, I work with myself and my wife. She assists me by sorting paperwork and stuff like that because she has her own views and she's entitled to have them. Whether they're the same as me or not is irrelevant to what we're talking about. And at present, it's a bone of contention with our little friend, immigration minister. In relation to sovereign citizens, I never met Desi Freeman. My comments in relation to what took place were in comments to what I could see in relation to procedure, which was flawed.
Mm-hmm. It was.
The openness, everything they did there was wrong. Everything they did in Queensland was wrong. They go out and they make these statements and there's nothing there to back it up. How can you say a group of people are sovereign citizens when you don't know who they are? You can say, oh, we got research and everything else. Well, where is it? If you're going to make those statements, where is it? Where are the actual warrants that you used on all these properties? Where are they? You have to have a warrant to enter the properties. You know, it's a hard thing because I don't like denigrating the law, but I actually seized some of the laws in this country lawfully under Magna Carta and filed it into England because it was lawful and I did it along with somebody else who did it as well. Not a problem, but
I'm just trying to get this because we've got limited time, and I'd love to talk. We do this again down the track. Why would Anthony Albanese though say that the sovereign citizen movement or citizens are a danger to our security.
Well, I'd ask him to explain what the danger is, because I've met all the people in the groups in Western Australia, and I've been to other states and lectured there, and I can honestly tell you, I don't know what he's talking about. In fact, I don't think he knows what he's talking about either. And he's willing to lie, cheat, and steal to put the blame on somebody else, when it's the shortcomings of every politician, who, by the way, is sitting there unlawfully. They were never voted in lawfully, and I've put that into videos for people to watch and understand. I don't go out there and put stuff out that's not true. I go out and I put what the law says. And if the law says they've got no right to be there, for instance, we can vote for one person once for the Senate, one person once for the House of Representatives. Why are we forced to vote multiple times when to do so is a felony? An indictable felony. It's very, very serious offence. Now, we're forced to do it. If we don't do it, we hit a penalty if you don't take the vaccine. Now, the minister said it's the world's greatest experimental vaccine. That should have stopped it there, because the criminal code says for the government to use the experimental vaccine on the people is a crime.
But it wasn't law to take it. And I understand. I mean, we can talk for a long, long time, and we should do that.
Oh, yeah, I understand. I'm trying to keep it short and cut across a few things so you realise what we're coming from, because I've been involved in these talks before, and time is of an essence. I do not understand why a politician, or all the politicians sitting in political parties, which, by the way, are totally unlawful under our Constitution, have the right to come out and accuse everybody else, when shortcomings of Albanese's so-called government, which doesn't exist in law, they were responsible for the shooting of those people on Bondi Beach, because he could have stopped it. The police, it comes out, some people are saying they stood there or sat down and wouldn't go out and fight those people. To me,
that's not right.
That's cowardice.
I think
if it is right,
but it's a breakdown in communication and command. They're because you're a cop.
Absolutely is.
Command is with Desi Freeman. I mean, why would you send out the three coppers? You should have sent, if you really, because there were warning signs. Why not send out the SWAT squad or someone like that? Why not do it by the book instead of going out there like John Wayne or
absolutely correct.
Now,
absolutely.
Wayne, we have to go. But
one of the pictures showed 8 people there.
Now, if somebody, because you have, I find it very interesting. I don't always agree, by the way, but that's okay. We're allowed to do that.
It's okay.
But government doesn't want that. Now, if somebody wants to find out more about your videos and more in depth, and to study it and understand that sovereign citizens are not white supremacists. Sovereign citizens love their country, and to tarnish.
Absolutely.
It's like saying, here's something. What about the murders around Sydney at the moment, the murders in Victoria? What if they said that these are Christians, these are Catholics, and they killed someone, so we're going to go after all the Catholics? Same thing. You can't tarnish everybody. And it's
no, you can't.
I think people need to know, Wayne, more about what you do and what the sovereign citizens are all about. Not to create trouble or to create upheaval, but knowledge is very powerful. Wayne, how do they do that?
How do they do that? If they go on to my Facebook page, Wayne Glue, there's numerous videos there. And when the Facebook only allows them for 1 month, and we got to re-put them back on. So they're always available. If you contact us and you want a copy of the proper original Constitution, and all the laws like Magna Carta, 1688, Bill of Rights, Habeas Corpus, and all those laws, we've got all of those, and they're available by contacting us on Facebook. Just message us, and we'll get them to you straight away. We can put you on to the person who sells the Red Constitution, which is the first one, and it's the interpretation by the people who framed the Constitution. It's been said that it was done by Quick and Garran, but that's nonsense. They put the book together based on all the conventions which put the Constitution together as a draft copy, because we had to get permission off England, and it came back as an enlightened, gives us a constitution and permission to have one. And it says that in the Constitution. I can point them to all those things, and all the stuff's readily available. We can just send it to you by email or on Messenger, or whichever way you want it. I only teach the Constitution and decisions of the High Court which back it up. And I've done that all the time because I know the ramifications of giving people false information, of which I'm not allowed to give them legal advice. I don't. I give them advice according to the teaching I've had both from the police force and from studying to be a Commonwealth public official, and for all the other work that I do with other people. And I'm entitled to do that as long as I don't give them legal advice, and I don't. I've been to court. I have seen how it works. I don't agree how it works. And unfortunately, the judiciary of this country has been compromised since they put in place the 1979 High Court Act, which takes away the separation of powers between the three tiers, being the executive, the legislature, and the judicature, all of which is wrong. And this is what I teach. I teach the basics so people won't go into what these sovereign citizen nonsense and won't turn on the people. I even work with native people, helping them with all their problems and their land and everything else, and I'm well known amongst their communities, and I'm very happy to do that because I grew up with native people.
Wayne, I have to say it's been very illuminating, and knowledge is very important because we are all ignorant in many areas, and the best way to quell that ignorance is just to become knowledgeable. Research, read, take note. It's your country, and you need to take more of an interest in it. Wayne Glue, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. We will do this again down the track. This is The World Today.
Surprisingly, the blueprint for transformation is woven into the United Nations Agenda 2030, ostensibly a vision for a better world.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I say again that taken together, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Climate Agreement provide humanity with a master plan for a sustainable way of life on this planet.
New York City, late September 2024, the setting for the United Nations Summit of the Future, a gathering of member nations to reinforce and accelerate Agenda 2030 and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The plan has a broad spectrum and is full of worthy ambition. But behind those deliberately bright and colourful boxes lies a darker theme, a shifting of influence and potentially power towards unelected world bodies. The strategy goes back well into the last century, and pressure is growing, because the goals are far behind targets set at the grand relaunching in 2015.
17 inspiring Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Our aim is clear, our mission is possible, and our destination is in our sights.
To end poverty and hunger, address inequality, protect our planet, and build a life of dignity for all.
It appears to be a noble and ambitious programme for a perfect world. And who could argue with those aspirations? But critics insist the goals are not what they seem. Alex Newman is a journalist and broadcaster who's been investigating the issue for 15 years. He has his own way of interpreting the rhetoric.
You have to learn to speak what I call UNEs. You have to know what the terms mean if you want to truly understand what is being discussed. When they talk about peacekeeping forces or the peacekeeping role of the United Nations, they're actually talking about the war-making capabilities of the United Nations. So you have this Orwellian doublespeak. When they talk about transparency, more often than not, they're talking about eliminating your privacy. Human rights is another very, very good example. They make very clear in this document that your rights can be restricted under the guise of public order or morality or whatever the case may be. And so they're saying, here's your rights, but by the way, they're not really rights. We can revoke them at any time. The UN is filled with contradictions like this. Like, for example, when they talk about gender equality, right? A normal person in the Western world thinks gender equality means a woman has a right to earn money, to own property, to have all the rights and privileges that a man would have. When you look at the individuals who lead this movement within the UN, you're talking about radical feminists. You're talking about people who are very interested in dissolving the nuclear family. As you dig into these goals, it's very clear we're dealing with something far more nefarious. Once you look past the marketing slogans, the kind of warm and fuzzy, we're going to end hunger, which again is just window dressing, you realize that this is actually a blank check for totalitarian global control.
Author and campaigner, the late Rosa Koire, called out the plan more than a decade ago.
It is the biggest public relations scam in the history of the world. But it's far more than that. It's a blueprint. It is the action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all information, all energy, all means of production, and all human beings in the world.
Not the station for people who label truth as misinformation just because they don't like it.
For facts and truth.
Today's News Talk. The World Today.
And welcome back to The World Today. Mike Ryan here. It's 6:41 p.m. In Queensland, 7:41 in New South Wales and Victoria, and it is 8:41 in the UK. And David Patton will tell me if I'm wrong shortly, if he slept in or not. Now, we wish to discuss, we're going to talk about if the UK rejoining the EU is a bad idea. David Patton is Professor of Industrial Economics and Co-Editor-in-Chief of International Journal of the Economics of Business at Nottingham University Business School. He completed his PhD at University College London in 1997 and has published widely in journals such as Economic Journal, the Journal of Health Economics, Public Choice, Social Science and Medicine, Small Business Economics, and the Journal of Economic Behaviour and Organisation. Also acted as an advisor to several government departments, including Revenue and Customs, and DCMS and DTI. David Patton, thanks for joining us. What's your views on on Starmer wanting you guys to be joined at the hip all over again?
Good morning. It's great to be with you. It's almost an article of faith for Keir Starmer that we need to be closer to the EU. But there's a slightly contradictory approach, because the Labour government has carried on the Conservative approach of tried to link up with trade deals with non-EU countries, Australia being an obvious example, New Zealand, the US, a Pacific partnership. And of course, that's impossible to do if you do rejoin the European Union. So officially, the Labour Party policy is that they wouldn't rejoin the European Union, they wouldn't even rejoin the customs union, but that we need to have closer ties to the EU. And what they're looking to do is to say, well, we will go along with European Union food standards, for example, and we will have what they call dynamic alignment. So the UK would say, well, we will just agree to whatever the European Union says in terms of their food laws, we will go along with, whether or not our MPs think that's a good idea or not. So for those of us who are looking from the outside, this is a slightly worrying situation, because one of the things that has become almost accepted as an article of faith in the UK is that Brexit, leaving the EU, has led to a big drop in trade for the UK. And it's very interesting when you look at what people perceive to be the case, and then you look at the actual data. And we had the latest data came out just last week, which showed that actually the UK trade across the world, exports and imports, has increased quite significantly since leaving the European Union. There's just been a shift. Of course, we do slightly less goods trade with the European Union. We've moved to services, and to the big trade deals we've had with other countries, and overall UK trade has increased. So my concern, I guess, is that Keir Starmer and other politicians are pushing us closer back to the European Union on what is essentially something that is not true. The idea that Brexit has reduced trade, when in fact the opposite has happened.
What do you think of Starmer's recent statement? And I can't do that. I was trying to do an impersonation of Starmer before, and thank God they can't reach to the computer and strangle me, because it was very bad, because we're Aussies, convicts. But when he said, we are not the Britain of the Brexit years anymore, what does he actually mean by that?
You've got to watch out, Mike. We have the Online Safety Act in the UK now, and if you're rude to Keir Starmer, who knows what he'll try to do to you. So he did have this quote saying, that we're not...
You'll be listening and you'll hear, hello, 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 they'll be at your door.
Yeah, I mean, we did have this quote about that we're not the Brexit years anymore. I think what he's really doing is playing to his core audience, and there's not many people who support Keir Starmer anymore in the UK, but there are a certain group of really hardcore Remainers who are very, very bitter about the UK, the Brexit decision to leave the European Union, and have never really accepted it and really sort of want us to go back in. So I think that sort of statement is a real signal to those sort of people that, yes, we're still with you. He's saying in the long run, we'll look to be rejoining the European Union, and we're doing what we can now. I suppose what matters is what happens in practice. So as I said, the Labour government are still pursuing international agreements and trade agreements, which they couldn't do if they were in the European Union and to the benefit of the UK. But they are taking these measures. They're looking to any opportunity to say, well, we will make our rules closer to the European Union. I've mentioned about food and agriculture. The other area is on climate change, where they're looking to sort of to harmonise our rules on climate change with the European Union, which will cause us to it'll make it much harder sort of to move away from the net zero policy approach, which lots of the opposition parties are now looking to do. The other interesting thing, of course, is that when Starmer says we need to cozy up to the European Union and get closer, what the European Union take that as meaning is that we will give them lots of money. And we used to be one of the big net payers to the European Union, and when we left, that was a big hit to the European Commission's budget. And one of the conditions the European Union have made very clear that if we want to go along with European Union rules, we want to go along with their integrate with their defence spending, go along with their rules on agriculture, that actually the UK should have to pay for the right to do that, which you might think is slightly odd, that we have to pay money to agree to follow another country's or another set of countries' rules, but that's the way the European Union works. So implicit in what Keir Starmer will agree, we don't know exactly what the agreement will be, but the European Union understanding is that there will be a lot of money coming from the UK, and of course that's politically very difficult for Keir Starmer. I think that there is this sort of perception, which is quite wrong, that leaving the European Union has somehow had a significant hit to UK trade and thereby the UK economy. Actually, the data doesn't really back that up. But be that as it may, that there's a perception amongst the public that is perhaps the case. But when it comes to agreeing to that our laws will follow the European Union's without our politicians having a say, and we will have to pay for that privilege, I think that becomes quite politically difficult for Keir Starmer.
Do you think the EU was sort of going, where did he come from? Not from this planet. Yeah, come in. It'll cost you X amount. What's the difference between, because what I actually, from sitting here, I see it's like almost a complete joining of the hip, but it's not. He calls it a reset. What is that different to total integration? And sure, he may say not, but the end result would probably suggest that it will be total integration, except that you guys have got to pay to be part of that integration, and then you've got to pay all the other bits on top of that?
Well, that would be the case if we were to rejoin the single market. That's where all the rules of your...
Will that happen?
Well, in that case, all the rules of your economy, you have to follow the same rules of the European Union. What Keir Starmer is proposing is to do that only for food, to follow their food regulations.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of his commitments in his manifesto that the UK would not rejoin the single market and that it would not rejoin the customs union. In other words, we wouldn't be tied to having the same tariff levels as the European Union and not allowed to do trade deals with countries like Australia. Now, that was a commitment in their manifesto. Of course, things might change. There are other people within the Labour Party who have been trying to push Keir Starmer to rejoin the customs union. It'd be a very odd thing to do because we already have tariff-free trade with the European Union as part of our post-Brexit agreement. But there are people pushing for that. And then a step further would be to rejoin the single market completely, where the whole economy, the whole of UK law would be tied to European Union law. At the moment, there's no indication that Keir Starmer is going to do that. It would be going directly against his manifesto commitment, and I think would be politically impossible at the moment. I guess what my feeling is what they're looking to do is to rejoin regulations with the European Union in certain areas, like on food, to look at other areas where they can more closely align. So they've already done this with the Erasmus programme on university students, and they're looking to do this with net zero rules as well. And then the argument will be, well, okay, we're tied to some European Union regulations without having a say in how they are set, and we're paying for the privilege. Perhaps it would be better to go the whole hog and actually rejoin the European Union. But that's much further down the line. That's something for, I think after the next general election or even after the one after that. At the moment, that wouldn't be a political sustainable position even for the Labour Party to pursue. So no, it's not complete integration they're looking at. It's in certain areas, but of course it will be to pay for the privilege as well.
Mm. And we're talking before with Catherine Blacklock, and she was saying that Labor are considering extending, because they can if they vote for it, and they probably will vote for it, by an extra 2 years, so you have until 2031. And in the meantime, we have Reform UK sort of starting to slip a bit now, and Rupert Lowe's putting his hand up, and it's all happening, as they would say. How disastrous, well, this is just, I suppose more personal, but how disastrous do you think if the UK keeps going down the path of what Starmer - the Labor Party would like to do, and having that extra 2 years to do it? Would that create problems not only for the UK up until 2031, and if there was a new government to get in after that, how the hell would they fix it?
Yeah, I don't know about this 2 years. Are you suggesting that the Labour Party would delay the next election by 2 years?
They're allowed to. Apparently they can take a vote on it, and if they decide to...
I think that's simply not going to happen. That would be...
I hope you're right.
Yeah, it would be, there's been not the slightest indication that they are looking at that or proposing to do that. It would be political dynamite for them. It would, I think it would, it just simply would not happen. And so I don't think that's in prospect at all. But then 5 years is quite a long time from 2024 anyway. So we've got another 3 years. So that's quite a long time to, to carry on down the road they're going. So, for me as an economist, I think I was a supporter of Brexit, but as an economist, there's always trade-offs to these things, and there are arguments on both sides. And actually, I thought the economic arguments were probably slightly overstated on both sides. It's certainly not been a disaster leaving the European Union. I think we haven't taken advantage of some of the things we could have done to make it even better. But actually, for me, the much more important reason was the democratic deficit you have in the European Union and the lack of accountability. So, and actually, I think for the majority of people in the UK, that democratic reason was a real motivation for leaving the European Union. On the economic side, I think the bigger danger at the moment is the whole net zero agenda, which is really proving quite disastrous for the UK economy in terms of high energy prices. So one of the reasons, for example, why UK goods exports have really struggled, not just with the EU, but across the world, is because of the deindustrialisation we've seen in the UK, caused largely by higher energy prices, which are pretty much the direct result of government policy. So, another few years of that sort of approach, I think, is going to be really problematic for the UK, and it's one of the reasons why our productivity and growth levels are really struggling. But there are reasons to be optimistic as well. As I said, that being outside of the European Union, we're not so tied as we were, even if we might be a little bit more tied in the future. But we're not so tied to what is really a sort of failing economic power of the European Union, which is really getting tied down by over-regulation, by again the net zero approach, and it has really been struggling compared to other parts of the global economy. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom for the UK. For the UK, if the immediate situation is not a great one from an economic point of view.
What about Starmer's eagerness to do more business with China?
Yeah, I mean, I think in international politics, and I'm an economist, not a politician, I recognise that you have to have an element of pragmatism, and you've got to, there are big countries where you are going to trade with, and you can have relationships with them, and you want to have those in the best situation you can. So of course that's fine that we have to talk to lots of countries, even ones where we may not be happy with where things are going. I think we've got to be very, very cautious though, because China clearly has certain threats to the UK economy, as well as the sort of more difficult political and human rights issues that are happening in China. I think one of the dangers for the UK of cozying up closer from an economic point of view is that when we're linked to China very closely, we're then at risk if things go wrong, or if we don't follow the route that China sort of likes. So one example is the electric vehicle mandate. So in the moment in the UK, if car companies don't sell enough electric vehicles, they sell too many petrol cars, they have to pay a fine to the government. There's certain targets the government has each year. And at the same time, the government is subsidising electric vehicles. And of course, most of the electric vehicles, the really competitive side, come from China. So we're ending up in a situation where essentially UK manufacturers or car manufacturers making cars in the UK are ending up subsidising Chinese manufacturers for cars. And we have essentially similar things with the solar panels, which largely come from the Chinese-dominated industry. So I think Keir Starmer's playing a very sort of dangerous game by cozying up too closely to China, albeit having a conversation and trying to keep relations on an even keel with a very important and significant global partner is something, of course, politicians have to do to some extent. The devil, I think, comes in the detail, and we haven't really seen exactly what has been agreed with China. And I think that's another aspect. Transparency is really important. We're seeing this across the piece within the UK. There's lots of talk about what's going to happen with the EU and cozying up to them. We've had no transparency on what that will involve or what that will cost. We've seen that with the Chagos deal, which you may have been following in Australia, where the UK has agreed to pay many billions of pounds to hand over some UK territory to Mauritius. Again, the concern is that from a geopolitical point of view, is that Mauritius is very much under the influence of China, so this may risk the US base there being a risk from Chinese influence. But there's been a real limited transparency of why are we doing this deal, exactly how much it is going to cost, what is underpinning it, where does this come from. So I think transparency over geopolitical agreements is something which we're lacking in the UK, albeit there has to be some. You can't necessarily talk about everything while negotiations are ongoing.
I need you to look into your cup of tea and tell me the future. How do you see though the next 6 months? And I mean, at the moment, I've not seen the UK going through this upheaval. Every man and his dog have got a gripe of some, in some case, and generally all warranted. But the UK seems to be somehow chugging its way through it. But then we have government intervention, and you mentioned the EVs. I mean, in Australia, they did a survey. No one wants the EVs, but they have to buy them. because there aren't that many petrol cars around anymore, so nobody wants them. Nobody, it's all government interference. How do you see the UK, say, even let's go forward a bit. Let's go for a year on what you're seeing now from the data. Where do we move for the next 12 months?
Well, from an economic point of view, I can see the UK continuing with very, very sluggish growth, possibly being in recession. The last 2 quarters, GDP per capita has actually decreased in the UK, even though GDP has increased slightly. When you take into account the population increase, GDP has decreased. And I can see a sort of carrying on along that keel of very low growth or degrowth, held back by high energy costs. On the other hand, as I said, there are some positives in terms of our improved economic relations with countries like Australia, Japan. We've perhaps come out of the US tariff things slightly better than some other countries, partly from not being in the European Union. That may be at risk, of course, with the Starmer European Union reset. The US is going to be much less likely to want to do a trade deal with the UK if we're tied, particularly with our food regulations, to the European Union. I think what's going to be more interesting is what happens politically. So the wolves are circling around Keir Starmer within his own party. And for the next few months, he seems to be safe. But there's plenty of rivals who want that top job and see his lack of popularity. In the UK, we've got some important elections coming up in May for local elections and elections in Scotland and Wales. And I think a lot of that will depend on what happens then. If the Labour Party do extremely badly, which looks likely to happen in Wales, we've actually got a by-election coming up in a couple of weeks where it'll either be the Greens or the Reform Party that look likely to win. More likely, I think, the Green Party when you look at the polling. But either way, Labour will probably get pushed into third place. That will put pressure on Keir Starmer. When you come to the May local elections, unless there's a very quick change in his political fortunes, Labour Party are going to do very badly again. You may have seen last week that they had tried to delay elections in lots of local areas in the UK, and the Reform Party were taking the government to court, and the government didn't lose their case, but they realised they were going to lose the case, and so changed their mind, and now the elections are going ahead. So a lot of those elections are in areas where the Labour Party were previously quite strongly. If they do badly in those areas and hundreds of councillors lose their seats, I think the pressure on Keir Starmer will probably be terminal. And then it'll be interesting to see, will there be somebody who comes in like Wes Streeting, who's sort of seen as a slightly more centrist than Keir Starmer, or will it be somebody more to the left of the party who may look to sort of even double down and go in a more extreme way on some of these net zero and other economic approaches? So I don't think it's going to be an easy ride for the UK economy. It's certainly going to be very interesting, I think, for people looking outside the UK, seeing what happens from a political point of view. As they say, it'll be time to get the popcorn out.
It was a very sad. Our summer was very sad for the English, and that wouldn't have helped at all with the 4-1 defeat in the Ashes too. That was.
I was just hoping you wouldn't mention that, but you got quite a long way into the interview before you did.
I have to, lack of class. That's what it's all about. But at least though, you guys did turn up, not on time, but you at least turned up. Professor David Patton, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can go to it's Payton, by the way, not Patton, but
sorry about that. Wrong.
You can go to I work at Nottingham University Business School. I'm a professor of industrial economics here, and you can go and look at my website and see the different research I do. And if you've got any interest, then you're welcome to get in touch.
David Payton, thank you so much for your time. I was thinking of General Patton, but you have a different accent.
That was 2 T's. I've only got 1 T in the Payton.
Oh, there you are, and much younger too. This is The World Today. Thank you so much for your company, everybody. Enjoyed it immensely. Protagonists was very good. Thank you to all those on the Protagonists. And we'll catch you again tomorrow. Same time, same channel, same phone.